All right, welcome to the Darien Sewer Commission regular meeting agenda of Tuesday, July 2nd, 2024. We are calling the meeting to order at, we'll call it 4:31 p.m. In room 206 of Town Hall. First item on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the June 4th meeting.
I have a little correction.
Okay?
Where it says 5.5 for Boston Post Road,
Under item 5.
Yep.
go down to the second line. Consultant
Oh, doing things. A G.
doing things.
All right. If that's our biggest
Oh,
problem,
yeah.
we're doing pretty well.
Yep. So I found.
Second line, thins.
Got it.
Things.
Doing this project?
Anybody else?
Doing- Oh, it could be this project.
Oh, this versus
Yeah.
things. Yeah,
From
this.
the
Got it.
consultant
Good for
doing
you.
Doing,
this.
oh, and then the doing is spelled wrong
Doing this
through.
project,
Yeah.
that's
Wow.
what it should
Doing
be.
this
Doing
project.
this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Anybody else with any comments?
Nope.
Can I hear a motion?
I'll move we approve with the change from,
Second.
Okay, Susan is first, Peter is second. All those in favor? Meetings are adopted. Okay, we're on to item number 3 on the agenda, and on item 3 on the agenda, I will be recusing myself because Redness and Mead, a company which I part own, has been retained by the applicant. So with that, Mr. Hill, if you take the virtual gavel, there you go.
Yes. So I believe have- we have a presentation, and I recognize the photo from the resume.
Yes, sir.
I believe you gave us a presentation on, the other side of town there.
Parklands. Yes, sir.
Parklands.
Yes.
So you remember that we have an audience and we need to talk at their level.
Yes. Oh, I will project.
No, I meant
Oh.
as in terms and math and things like that.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Because in your present, I will tell you my big caveat is the quick switching between gallons and CFS. It's not like when you're doing kilograms to grams or something like that. It's not a quick mental gymnastics. The 448.8 gallons per minute. So you need to explain that a bit.
Okay. So my name is Patrick Schur. I'm a professional engineer licensed in the state of Connecticut. I'll be presenting a summary of our sewer capacity analysis for Thorndal Circle. We also have Jay Klein with Carmody, Torrance, Sandak, and Hennessy, as well as Thomas Milton with SLR Engineering and Michael Adamo with Trammell Crow. I was hoping to move through this with, if there are any questions in terms of clarification on an individual slide, I'd be happy to answer it, but I think given the thoroughness of the presentation, I might end up hitting some questions that might come up later in the presentation. So if at all possible, maybe we'll hold off on the larger explanations, but I can answer anything that you do need me to and any clarifications. So this is the subject site of the Thorndal Circle property. It is accessed off of the Post Road via Thorndal Circle, bound to the north by I-95, the south by Hecker Avenue, and then the southeast by these properties along the Post Road. This is the existing condition survey. You can see these are the 5 office buildings that are going to be removed and replaced. With apartment buildings, 1 Thorndal Circle right here. Discharges via sewer lateral out to the 8-inch main in Thorndal Circle. 20 and 16 Thorndal Circle currently connect to the 8-inch main in Hecker Avenue. And then 28 and 22 Thorndal Circle flow to the northwest of the property to a 12-inch town main that flows through the northwest corner of the property and then continues through the western portion of the property down to Hecker Avenue. Here, I have a sewer exhibit laying out all of the sewer mains between our site and the Stony Brook Pump Station. As I mentioned, this is the 8-inch main in Thorndal Circle, which flows to the 24-inch main in the Post Road. It then crosses the town property along Renshaw Road, passing under the Stony Brook, meeting the 15-inch main that parallels it before flowing down to the Stony Brook pump station right here. This is the 12-inch main that comes, it passes beneath I-95 and crosses our property right here and flows into Hecker Avenue, where it meets the 8-inch main in Hecker and then increases to a 15-inch main that then parallels the Stony Brook all the way to where it meets the 24-inch main right here, and then continues to flow down to the Stony Brook pump station. Here we have the proposed plan showing the 5 new apartment buildings, clubhouse, and pool. The clubhouse and Building A both discharge via gravity to the 8-inch main in Thorndale Circle. The remainder of the buildings, via an on-site sanitary sewer system, discharge to the northwest corner of the property into that 12-inch main that crosses the property, flows through the western half, and meets Hecker Avenue. In preparing this analysis, we had 2 study objectives. We analyzed the capacity of the receiving sewer under proposed conditions, accounting for known developments and additional potential connections within the sewer shed, for example, those currently on septic. Objective 1 was to analyze the capacity of the gravity mains between the property and the Stony Brook pump station. Number 2 was to assess the capacity of the Stony Brook pump station. For design standards, we turned to the Town of Darien Capacity Management Operation and Maintenance Program document prepared by Arcadis and dated December 2022, otherwise known as the CMOM. In section 5.2 of the CMOM, it requires a site plan review with a design adhering to the town sewer standards and the New England Interstate Water Pollution Control Commission TR16 guides for the design of wastewater treatment works. So that per the town sewer standards design requirements that are found in Appendix E of the CMOM, sanitary sewer and pump stations shall be completed in accordance with the design requirements of TR16. It also states the following sewer calculations are required: average and peak hourly sewage flows generated from the project, additional flows which may be generated from any future extensions, required sewer sizing under current and future conditions, percent capacity utilized and sewer velocity under average and peak condition with proposed sizing, impact, if any, of additional flows on downstream sewers and pump stations. So per TR16, the TR16 capacity and flows design factors include peak hourly wastewater flow, additional peak flows of industrial and commercial waste, maximum groundwater infiltration, topography of immediate areas, and the difficulty of installation. So now when we got to evaluating the site flows, we were using the Connecticut Public Health Code. Under existing conditions, the 123,722 square feet of office space generated an average daily flow of 12,377 gallons per day. We then applied a peaking factor of 5.6 to that and converted it to CFS to get a peak flow of 0.11 CFS. Under proposed conditions, you had the 274 bedrooms and including a 50-person pool. The average daily flow was 34,825 gallons per day. And after applying a peaking factor of 5.
Can you do that calculation one time?
Oh, yes, sir.
So that people will understand it, because I'm sure that a everyday citizen is not going to understand your quick jumping from gallons per day to C cubic feet per second.
Of course. So I would take the gallons per day, and then the peaking factor is what takes that average gallons per day and gets it into calculates the peak flow, instantaneous flow. And then I converted that to CFS by dividing it by 7.48, which are 7.48 gallons per cubic foot. Then I divided it by 24 hours of the day, then by 60 minutes in a day, or 60 minutes in an hour, and then by 60 seconds in a minute. And so that's how I was able to convert it down to 0.3 CFS. So that includes the peaking factor and then the unit conversion on top of that to get it to CFS.
Thank you.
So here we have the sewer shed exhibit. This is where we lay out the study points that were part of our analysis. Study point number 1 is along the 8-inch main in Thorndale Circle. Study point number 2 is along the 15-inch main right where it crosses Hecker Avenue. Study point number 3 is along the 15-inch main directly upstream of where it meets the 24-inch 24-inch main. Study point number 4 is located upstream of the Stony Brook pump station along the flattest portion of pipe in the 24-inch run. So that was at 0.08%. And then study point number 5 was at the Stony Brook pump station. Oh, sorry. So study point number 1, we studied the 8-inch pipe that sloped at 1.8% and found the capacity of the pipe is 1.87 CFS. The tributary area consists of 3 and 6 Thorndal Circle, which are the existing office buildings not part of this project, and then Building A and the clubhouse of the proposed project. The peak flow was 0.08 CFS, and we did use a peaking factor of 5.6. The peak flow accounts for 4% of the available capacity of that pipe. We did not study groundwater infiltration because it was a small sewer shed and the condition of the PVC pipe didn't warrant it. Next, we went on to study points 2 and 3 along the 15-inch main that runs from Hecker to the Town Hall property and Renshaw Road. Study point number 2 is a 15-inch lined pipe sloped at 0.06%. Its calculated capacity was 1.71 CFS, and the peak flow flowing through it was 0.93 CFS. And that factored in the tributary area and a calculation for the inflow and infiltration. And I apologize, I failed to point out. So in calculating the flows for 2 and 3, you have a larger sewer shed up north of I-95, and that had flow metering done by Arcadis. So we factored in that flow metering and then did our own sewer shed for the remainder that was not captured in the flow monitoring. So we do have, some of it represents what was measured by Arcadis, and then we had to calculate for the remainder of the properties within that sewer shed to get these flows.
Patrick, one quick question. You mentioned that on your site itself, is it a 12-inch line main sewer or a 15-inch?
It's a 12. It's a 12.
And that goes into a 15 at Hecker Avenue where the 8 and the 12 combine?
Yes, sir.
And the 15 all the way down through? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Cool. Thank you.
So study point 2, once we factored in the peak flow of 0.93 CFS, we found that takes up 54% of the available capacity of the pipe. Study point number 3, which was further downstream, is along a 15-inch pipe sloped at 0.16%. The calculated capacity was 3.05 CFS, and the peak flow was calculated at 1.37 CFS. And we did end up factoring in additional I&I because of the additional pipe run that was between study point 2 and number 3. And we also factored in another over 100 residences that fall between those 2 study points as well. So the peak flow is 1.37 CFS, and that accounts for 45% of the available capacity in the pipe. We did find in our study of the SSO logs that were provided by DPW that there were no rain-related SSO events found along just this 15-inch pipe in the past 20 years, which align.
Sanitary sewer overflows.
Yes, sir.
It's my industry, but
Yeah.
it's not theirs.
No, I understand.
And do we have any idea when that pipe was lined, that 12-inch? Ish?
It wasn't part of this recent project. I'd actually gotten that information from Ms. McCarthy with Arcadis, but
And then the
Maybe
15-inch is lined too, right? That was.
Maybe 30 years ago.
Okay.
Could be the 80s.
and the 15-inch, we got that PVC based off of, I think, the Cameron results, so that must have been lined
Newer.
previously as well.
Thank you.
So we have installed 2 flow meters that were installed on April 24th, 2024 to verify the assumptions we had along this 15-inch main and witness the early initial impacts of the sewer rehabilitation. Flow meter number 1 was installed in the 15-inch main paralleling the Stony Brook at study point number 3. Based on the peak instantaneous flow measured during the 8-week monitoring period, the proposed peak flow to study point number 3 would be 0.94 CFS, which is 31% of the capacity. So we put in these flow meters to try to, since that was kind of a gap in the Arcadis flow, yes?
So that's not what's in the materials you gave us.
So we actually updated it because I wanted to take the most recent flow meter data, since we had that large rain event on Sunday. That was 0.88 inches in 30 minutes. And when I looked at the flow gauge, the flow meter, we actually had our highest peak in flow meter number 1. So I wanted to be fully transparent and make sure that we had the highest possible number.
Cool, thank you.
So I do have the additional supporting calculations for study point number 2 or 3 and 3. I can go through them if you'd like, or I can move along, whatever you would prefer.
You can move along.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time comparing numbers between the various reports.
Oh,
So it's like, wait a minute, there's another new number.
Just a quick section on the peaking number. That's been changed to 4.1, 4.0, and sometimes over 5. How do you pick that?
so I'm actually going to touch on that when I get to
cool.
study point number 4.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the big one.
And it is, so in our memo, we pointed out, when Arcadis did their review of our study point number 2 and 3, they had better data, or they processed the data in a better fashion than we could. And so Ms. McCarthy provided better numbers to estimate what the inflow and infiltration along those pipes for study point number 2 and 3 are. So we incorporated her calculations because it is a fair representation of the I&I. So that's the difference that you see between our initial report and what I'm showing you here. And study point number 2 and 3 are consistent with the Arcadis response.
And does that change the peaking factor then, adjusting it based on real world conditions-ish?
No, because the peaking factor was only used for the connected residences. So when you have the real world flow data, like the flow meter upstream and the I&I, the inflow and infiltration, neither of those require a peaking factor. So in this sewer shed, the only peaking factor, the only things I had applied the peaking factor to were the single family residences, atria, the town property, and our property. So where we had a theoretical calculated average daily flow per the Connecticut Health Code, that's when we applied the peaking factor. But real world data is a better representation of that. That's just how we take these average daily flows using the standard numbers based off of floor area or bedrooms and get it to a peaking number. So study point number 4, as I mentioned earlier, is located just upstream of the Stony Brook. Fortunately, Arcadis had a flow meter right here, the Stony Brook flow meter, so we were able to use all their data in doing these calculations. So study point number 4, the peak flow rate along that 24-inch trunk main. The Stony Brook flow meter instantaneous peak flow rate was 3.73 CFS, and that was during the 1.8-inch rainstorm in April of 2020. So that started as our base to represent all known connections and the I&I associated with that, with a wet period and the rainfall event. So then we factored in our known future flows. So that's Thorndal Circle, Corbin District, and 7 Sedgwick. So since that area is already being flow monitored, we factored in the net increase over existing conditions. So we have the Thorndal Circle net increase of 22,448 gallons per day. Corbin District, which was pulled directly from their report, their net increase of 53,756 gallons per day, and the 7 Sedgwick net increase of 2,475 gallons per day. The total net increase resulted in 78,679 gallons per day. So then we applied our peaking factor of 4 and converted it from gallons per day to CFS and got the peak flow generated by new projects at 0.49 CFS. So we added that to the Stony Brook flow meter data and got the total peak flow for current connections and known future connections to be 4.22 CFS. Then we went a step further per DPW's request and factored in potential future connections. So these are the 368 single-family residences within the sewer shed that tomorrow could run a lateral out to the sewer and the road. We factored in flow for each one of them, and that was using data provided by the town, the gallons per day typically for a single-family residence. Similarly, we did it for the 16 commercial properties that are in the sewer shed but not currently connected. And so the total flow generated by those potential future connections is 86,400 gallons per day. And the total peak flow generated is 0.53 CFS. And we also applied a peaking factor of 4 to that. So that basically earmarks all capacity for every property that has the right to connect in that sewer shed that is not currently connected. So the total peak flow in the sewer shed, including known and potential future connections, is 4.75 CFS. So this is actually now getting back to how we calculated the peaking factor. This is per TR 16, and peaking factor, right here, we have this line right here, peak on maximum day, and it is a function of the average daily discharge of domestic sewage. So the larger the sewer shed, the more of a dampening effect it has on the peak rates. You're just, with tens of miles of pipe, with all these connections, you're less likely to have the peak coming out of Thorndal lining up with the peak coming out of another complex 5 miles up the road. So as the sewer shed gets bigger, the peaking factor drops. So as you can see, this red line coming down lines up with 0.7 MGD, so 700,000 gallons per day. And we found that's right around what the effluent generated by connected properties is in this sewer shed. So on an average day, the connected properties generate 700,000 gallons per day. So I followed this up and across and got the peaking factor of 4. So I previously used a peaking factor of 5.6 for study points 1, 2, and 3, because those are much smaller sewer sheds. So the 5.6 up here is the maximum peaking factor to be used, and so that's why it was used for study points 1, 2, and 3.
Do we have this in our packet?
No, I added this
Would
link.
you make sure that we get an updated copy
Oh, of course, yes,
of what
ma'am.
you've got there? Thank you.
And on Monday, yesterday, we actually talked with Ms. McCarthy and Darren about coordinating the peaking factors, because that's where we disagreed with Arcadis. So Arcadis came back in their comments and said, first, the Manning's equation for the concrete pipe, we previously used 0.13, but given the age of the pipe, 0.14 is more representative of the conditions. So we accepted that, but we did push back on the use of a 5.6 peaking factor just because it wasn't in line with the TR16 standards. And so we had a discussion yesterday with Ms. McCarthy and Darren, and Arcadis agreed, or Lindsay agreed with us, and Arcadis agrees with us. And I know she'd be happy to speak on it if you have any questions on that.
So that's just the volume going through Stony Brook Pump Station, which is the sewer shed, basically, not the whole sewer in town.
Correct, just through the Stony Brook sewer shed, and that's removing all the I&I. So it's just user-generated connections,
Okay.
since that's where you apply the peaking factor.
So the
I'm
peak-
sorry, go ahead.
The peaking factor has no relationship to I&I.
I&I at all?
Correct. If we took into account I&I, then we would actually have a lower peaking factor, because we are moving a lot more volume than 700,000 gallons per day through the system. So we were being conservative in just using the connected properties, because the larger the flow, the lower the peaking factor. But 4 is a typical number, and it is in line with the user-generated effluent, so we thought it was a fair representation.
Okay, thank you.
So we've got our calculated peak flow of 4.75 CFS. Oh, sorry. The lowest capacity length of the pipe is the 24-inch RCP sloped at 0.08%. So that with the Manning's number of 0.04 per the Arcadis comments, and the calculated capacity was 5.94 CFS. So then using that known future flow of 4.22, where we just took into account Thorndale Circle, Sedgwick, and Corbin District, that represents 71% of the pipe's available capacity. And then when you take into account the known and potential future flows, getting a peak flow of 4.75 CFS, that represented 80% of the pipe's available capacity. And so that 80% number accounts for all known and potential future connections, the peak inflow and infiltration experienced during a 3-month wet season monitoring period, and all current connections as well.
Question
Yes.
while we're there. I'm sorry, it's a little out of my, but I thought that pipe capacity was at capacity at like 88%.
So I've watched some videos of I think that reference is in terms of the pipe depth. So there is a point at which the pipe, there's two types of capacity. You have full flow pipe capacity and maximum capacity. And so we go with the more conservative number, which is full flow capacity. But when the pipe is technically at 9.93% of the pipe's depth is when you hit max capacity. And then if it fills any further, it actually reduces the capacity of the pipe because of the additional friction placed by the walls of the pipe. So we would never use the max capacity because it's almost theoretical, because what are the chances that when you've got all this inflow and infiltration, all these connected properties coming in, and it hits that 93% of the diameter of the pipe and pushes effluent through at this maximum rate. But in reality, we're just using the max pipe capacity, which is a more conservative number. So the
max pipe capacity is 93% is the number you use.
We are not using that. I was
Well,
thinking.
I'm confused here what you're saying, the capacity. I'm sorry, I know you meant you were gonna do it at the end. But now I'm confused here. So is the 5.94 100% of a different calculation?
No, the 5.94 is the full flow capacity of the pipe.
Okay.
And when it's 100% full, that's how much it can push through.
So we need to take 93% of that, is what you're saying, to be?
No, I'm sorry. That's a more theoretical number. I was trying to explain. I've heard people say where they're like, oh, if we get it at like 87% capacity, that moves more effluent through.
Really?
But it does not. That's not the case. There's only the max capacity, or the full flow capacity is what we use. It's the conservative number, and it represents the maximum amount of flow that can go through the pipe when it's full. The pipe can technically move more effluent when it hits this perfect number of a flow depth of 93% of the pipe diameter. But we don't touch that number because it's theoretical.
So instead of saying full flow capacity, it's maximum flow.
No, we're using full flow capacity, the more conservative.
But I'm trying to talk
Yes.
in a general term, because
Yeah.
you're confusing me
I'm
here.
sorry about that.
So I'm saying that the maximum flow of the pipe would be 5.94 CFS,
Yes, sir.
approximately 2,700 gallons a minute.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I have a question. What, as this pipe loads up, what happens to the velocity?
The velocity would increase, I guess, as you get the higher flow.
Would it ever
the higher-
get to turbulent?
I'm not sure off the top of my head. I can look into that though and get back to you.
What was your question? Turbulence?
Yeah, a turbulent flow sort of has a kind of a scouring effect. And, I don't know what the pipe is made of.
It's reinforced concrete pipe.
Well, concrete and where?
And I can look into that and get back to you.
While we're still on this, the fact that you have 80% as the known potential for future flow, and Arcadis had 87, is that because they were using a different peaking factor than you were?
That's
Thank you.
correct. So as I mentioned earlier, we have flow meters installed in the sewer mains. So we had the first one that was at study point number 3 in the 15-inch pipe, and the second was in the 24-inch main just on the east side of the Stony Brook before it merges with the 15-inch main. So those two flow meters combined to produce data comparable to the Arcadis Stony Brook flow meter, less 20 homes that happen to connect into the system downstream of the two flow meters. But it's a good indication of kind of what the flow reaching the Stony Brook pump station is. And during our monitoring period, this says 2 sizable rain events, but I have updated it to include rain events that occurred on the 26th and 27th and also the 30th. But on the May 23rd, we had a rain event of 0.88 inches in 40 minutes, and that corresponded with a peak flow of 2.66 CFS. May 27th, we had 0.95 inches in 12 hours. That produced a peak flow of 2.15 CFS. On June 26th and 27th, we had 0.96 inches in 24 hours. The corresponding peak flow was 1.8 CFS. And just on Sunday, we received 0.88 inches in 30 minutes, and that produced a peak flow of 2.59 CFS. So we reran the calculations just using our flow meter data with the two combined meters, just somewhat as a data verification, and have a combined flow of 2.66 CFS that was metered. And then the total peak flow in the sewer shed, including known and potential future flows using the 2024 flow meter data, is 3.68 CFS, and this represents 62% of the available capacity. So this begins our flow diagrams. This is at study point number 4, and I'm just kind of layer in the different flows to give a representation of how much of the pipe they occupy. So this is going to differ from your slides because in our conversation with Arcadis, they said that the best representation of infiltration in the pipe is 85% of the overnight dry weather flow. And so we were representing it as 100% of the overnight dry weather flow. So this has no impact on our final numbers or whether there's capacity, but I wanted to make sure that these diagrams were the most accurate representation of the data. And so I made this small tweak in order, based off of what Lindsay had told us.
So just the translation, you're saying that you were saying that during the night, 85% of the flow is from leaks in the pipe and sump pumps, not from actual sewerage.
Yes, sir. Yes, what they do is an average between midnight and 6 a.m. and then 85% because they assume 15% is actual connected flow, and that's kind of just an industry standard, I guess. Yeah.
Okay.
So the overnight infiltration, or the groundwater infiltration overnight lows, or 85% of the overnight lows, is 15.5% of the capacity of the pipe. Next, we layer in the peak sewer use, and this is the daytime highs. And this is 21%, giving us a total of 37% of the available capacity of the pipe. Next, we factor in the rainfall derived flow, which represents 26.3% of the pipe, and that is the peak flow that was measured during that 1.8-inch rainfall event. Subtracted out from the peak, and then the difference on top of the peak sewer use that was measured at daytime highs. And so this clean water, the rainfall derived flow and the groundwater infiltration is the clean water in the system. And at this point in time, they represent 66% of the flow in the system is likely clean water.
Yeah, because you said 70 in your handout.
Yes, and this has been revised given those new overnight, or with the 85% for infiltration. And then we factor in the known future flows with the Thorndal Circle development representing 2.4%, and then Corbin District and 7 Sedgwick at 5.7%. So this is where you can see the inflow, infiltration, peak current usage, plus the known future connections gets us to 71% of the available capacity of the pipe. Finally, we add in the speculative future connections, or all the residences and commercial properties that are currently in the sewer shed not connected. That's 8.9%, and that brings us up to the 80% of available capacity number. And I just want to point out that none of this factors in the current I&I rehabilitation work going on and the clean water that's actively being removed from the system through those improvements.
And you have some documentation on that, correct?
Yes. So finally, study point number 5 is the Stony Brook Pump Station. The pump station consists of 3 variable speed pumps. We were provided 7 data sets correlating to several significant rainfall events. They were reviewed. The peak discharge rate measured from the pump station was 4.84 million gallons per day, or 7.49 CFS during Hurricane Ida on September 2nd, 2021. The apparent capacity of the pump station is greater than the capacity of the 24-inch RCP tributary to it, which was the 5.94 CFS. The pumps were all installed between 2015 and 2017 and have an operating point of 2.8 million gallons per day each at a total dynamic head of 100 feet. And per the Arcadis pump station evaluation report, during wet weather events, flow increases up to 3 times the average daily flow. Although there is a significant increase in flow, typically only 2 pumps are required during extreme weather events. So given that the upstream pipe has the lower capacity, that kind of help guarantee that, or show us that the pump station will have the capacity to pump whatever reaches it. So we studied, the town of Darien, DPW provided sanitary sewer bypass documentation from 2003 to 2023. Of the 8 sanitary sewer bypass or sanitary sewer overflow events that occurred between the development site and pump station, 5 were due to blockages in the pipe or equipment issues at the pump station. The other 3 were the result of excessive flows during major storm events. So you saw an SSO event on September 27th, 2018, in which 5.38 inches of rain fell in 24 hours, and that correlates to a 10-year storm. That storm actually continued and produced 6.95 inches over 72 hours. And that's significant because the next SSO occurred a week later, in which 3.68 inches fell in 24 hours. And that corresponds with a 2-year rainfall event. However, you have to also account that within a week, there had also been 6.95 inches of rain that had fallen. Finally, July 9th, 2021, there's an SSO event after 6.01 inches fell in 24 hours, which is over a 10-year event. Just for your reference, a 5-year storm is 4.55 inches in 24 hours. We then looked for
Patrick, can I just
Yes.
stop you for a minute? I did ask Darren what manholes these were, and when he looked back in his records, he did not find the SSO on September 27th. Would you have, and he also apparently didn't save the documentation he gave you for 2003 to 2023. Do you have that, and could you show that?
I do, yeah, and I
mean,
actually.
After the.
Oh, of course. Darren actually gave me a call after, and what we found is he provided me with an Excel sheet that summarizes all the SSO events, and then he provided me with the handwritten documentation for each individual
Right.
one. And so the Excel sheet had it as 927, and then the handwritten ones had it at 925. But that is, I believe that was the 2 wrench, or no, sorry, it was the
25 Renshaw.
25 Renshaw Road. And so those were, though he said 925 and I said use 927, that is the SSO event in question, and that's at 25
Well,
Renshaw.
in his, that may be. In his email to me this morning, he said that the only ones on or about September 27th was our favorite one over at Old King Highway North in Sedgwick, and 141 near Water Lane.
Of course, and I can provide.
But there was nothing until October for the 25 Renshaw Road, and yet another one at Sedgwick.
Yes. Yeah, I can provide
Old
the
Faithful?
documentation he sent me.
That'd be
It's-
super, because
yeah.
I would, if you have it in Excel, I would love for our
And I
person.
couldn't find my Excel sheet.
Yeah.
I probably made it for him and
That's
sent
right.
it on. And
I want to work with Penny and have her put something together so that we have this in Excel, so we always have this information in our records. I know she can do it, she's a whiz.
Can you just like briefly in the sewer shed itself,
Mhm.
identify where those SSOs were, where they were the 24 inch
Oh,
and
here.
15 inch combined?
Yes.
That's
so-
what I asked.
So two of the
They were 25 Renshaw.
The 2 of the SSO events were at 25 Renshaw Road.
You know, I remember the house and everything. Was that the manhole in their front yard, right? They came
Yes, by the hedgerow, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Right.
small tributary, so that would mean that the whole pipe would have to be filled.
Yeah,
And that the pump station hasn't kept up.
Yeah, we're assuming
Because
that.
you're creating a,
Tailwater.
Backwater, yeah.
or a
Headwater.
larger retention in the pipe itself.
Yes.
And the only reason it didn't pop somewhere else because they're bolted down.
Is that the tributary sewer shed, like an 8-inch line that does the houses only?
Correct, and
Comes
then
in,
and then it
okay.
meets with our 24. So even though it's not technically between our, it's definitely being impacted by the tailwater of what's in the 24-inch pipe.
Okay.
And then during on July 9th, that was reported as happening on 2 Renshaw Road, and that was Hurricane Irene. So I mean, you had that whole field inundated. So from what I understand, when Darren explained this to me, when they do an SSO report, you have to choose the closest property,
Okay,
and
got it,
I
got it.
think
That
that
might have been-
there were
might have
probably
been the field.
plenty of manholes that were submerged out there during that event.
But so it's the 24 inch, not the 15 coming down. That's probably where after they combine.
Yes.
All right, cool. Thank you.
And then, so we looked at 3 other rain events, 2 of which caused SSO events. For the mechanic or the Sedgwick manhole. And these were all events in which there were no SSOs events reported between our property and the Stony Brook pump station. So that's September 29th, 2023, 4.4 inches fell in 24 hours, which is a 5-year storm. December 11th, 2023, 2.42 inches fell in 24 hours, which is under a 1-year storm. And on March 23rd, 2024, 3.08 inches fell in 24 hours, which is less than a 2-year storm. And none of those events produced an SSO event in our in the sewers between our property and the Stony Brook pump station. So of course, as you know, Darien's currently undergoing an inflow and infiltration rehabilitation program. The 3 phases of the project include rehabilitating 32,152 linear feet of pipe, rehabilitating 244 manholes. And during phase 2 alone, 64 manholes in flood-prone areas will be equipped with watertight frames and covers. An additional 49 will be equipped with inflow protectors, and 10 will have their frames and covers raised. I point that out because in these larger storm events, when you have manholes completely inundated, you can just imagine the impact the direct connection of floodwater into the system has. So these steps, even though in these smaller storms they might not have an immediate impact, I think those are going to have a very big impact when you have these larger storm events and have surface waters that were previously going in through pick holes and through leaks in the manhole. So per the Arcadis SSES report, tables 4.5 and 4.6, the 75% estimated infiltration removed by Rehab is 670,000 gallons per day. So as I mentioned earlier, all connections, current and known / potential future, account for 38% of the pipe capacity at study point number 4. And the estimated infiltration to be removed at the time of the report via sewer rehabilitation is 1.03 CFS, and that is just converting the 670,000 gallons per day to CFS. No peaking factors were involved since it is in infiltration. And that number is equal to the increase in flow generated by the Thorndal Circle, Corbin District, and Sedgwick redevelopments and speculative future connections combined.
And none of this includes removing any of the sump pumps.
Correct. These are just the current
This-
projects underway.
And it's just looking, I looked up their, those tables, 4.45 and 4.6, and those are just manholes and pipe, treating the pipes.
Yes.
Okay. So anything we do with sump pumps is ice. icing on the top.
Exactly.
Okay.
But it's even more, that's crazy.
So back to the flow diagrams. This is the final capacity with known and speculative future flows. As you can see, 38% of the pipe's capacity is just generated by the current connections and all future known and speculative connections. The remainder of the pipe is occupied by clean water from I&I. And you can imagine in an SSO event, when this pipe is full in flow and has head pressure on it, these make up an even smaller portion of the total flow moving through that pipe. So here we've now taken the pipe and we're just looking at the known future connections because of course these speculative future connections, you might have, it's going to come in drips and drabs. It might take 20, 30, 40 years before you actually see a sizable portion of these residential and commercial properties connecting. So we looked at this kind of just as what's it going to look like in 5 years with these 3 projects done, with phases 1 through 3 of the I&I program completed. And what you've got here is you take the 71% of the known future flow and it comes down to 54%. Of course, all of these diagrams have this note, but it's important to note that this is diagrammatic as flow in the system's constantly changing moment by moment and based on a number of factors. And of course, like Arcadis uses, they estimate based off of the flaws they see in the pipes and what they're doing. So these are all, of course, speculative numbers, but it should be a close enough representation to just show the impact that removing that clean water from the system will have on the capacity of the pipe.
So, stupid question. If their estimates were correct, how little flow would there be in the pipe at night?
Oh, that's a good question. So, I'm trying to think of where I can find that data. I mean, I guess it's tough to tell because the way they estimate it is looking at these flaws, they try to figure out repairing each one, what'll generate. And so one of their comments was actually, be careful using this in your flow reports because these are under certain conditions. It might not be indicative of the flow taken out during drier conditions. So similarly, when you don't have a rain event, overnight flows, in reality, it's not going to be pulling out the full 106 or 670,000 gallons per day because you just might not have as much water pushing into those flaws that were repaired. So we thought it was a fair representation when you're taking into account these peak conditions with a 1.8 inch rainfall event and high groundwater. But I can get you a number and subtract out the 670,000 gallons per day from the infiltration, but I don't know if that would be a good representation of the data because
No, I mean, I see the sewer line is like the highway,
yeah.
and you don't want the traffic. You'd rather have flow, 24/7 where it's moving than that. So that's where I'm coming from with your removing I&I and how low the flow would be at night. I mean, then there's useful space there that could be used.
Oh, of course. And so we see the drop from clean water being removed is about 17%. And so in our previous estimates, the overnight flow was 15.5%. So if I were to just use that number and say, hey, we're removing 17% from the pipe, then we would have no infiltration. But I don't think that's indicative of what would actually be happening because there's still other problems to be found.
Disney World's in Florida, not here. So that's not happening.
No.
Okay.
Can I ask another stupid question? Does slope have anything to do with the slope of the pipe? There was something in the Corbin project that I picked up on where the slope of the pipe.
Yeah, where the slope of the pipe is less, you're gonna have a less capacity because the water doesn't move along. Because the water is forced by gravity or moved by gravity.
Okay.
And that's why when we chose which study points to use, we always selected the flattest pipe
Okay.
because that's going to be the most conservative number since it has the least amount of capacity.
Thank you.
So then, inflow and infiltration abatement. The proposed redevelopment of Thorndale Circle results in an increased average daily flow of 22,448 gallons per day. Based on the 274 bedrooms, the sewer connection fee alone is $205,500. And I understand that the fees were set to roughly correlate with the cost of I&I abatement. And per the Arcadis SSES, it costs roughly $6.5 to remove 1 gallon per day of infiltration. And so the proposed fee can facilitate the removal of 31,500 gallons per day via I&I improvements. So given the amount of I&I downstream of the site, the appropriate mitigation for an increase in flow is abatement. It's
I have to amend that. There's also just you're still connecting to the single most expensive entity the town of Darien owns. So yes, it happens to be that number, but in my opinion, it is a combination of two things. It's not just there for I&I removal. It's also continuing maintenance, and it's, if you want to drop in a package plant and discharge into Stony Brook, by all means, but you'd rather do this. So there's a cost to joining the club.
of course, and it is a very significant asset of the town. So we took our 2024 flow meter data and compared it with the 2022. The Stony Brook flow meter and combined flow meter values were compared between April 25th and May 28th when the flow data was available for both 2020 and 2024. An analysis was prepared comparing the lowest and highest instantaneous flow rate for each day. And the data suggests the rehab program is working as seen in a drop in the overnight low flow values. Given the time of day, these flows are a good indicator of overall infiltration. So in 2020, the average low, so we took the lowest flow from each day, that average during that time period was 1.114 CFS. And during the same period, same number for 2024 was 0.747 CFS. So that difference of 0.367 CFS corresponds to roughly 240,000 gallons per day less in the system. And it's important to note that there was much more rainfall in the first 5 months of 2024 versus 2020. In 2020, we have 15.22 inches, and this year we've had 24.67 through the end of May, which is a 62% increase. And yeah, I just wish we saw those groundwater monitors in because it would be interesting to see how much higher it is. Here we have a encapsulate or comparison of the rainfall data. So up here is the month-by-month comparison. And then we have the trailing number for 30 days, the last 60 days, 90, 100, and 180 days. And as you can see in each factor, there's a pretty substantial increase in rainfall. And here's a graph showing that same information. The dotted line corresponds to the max here for 2020 and the minimum here for 2020, while the solid lines correspond to the max and min for 2024. And so you can kind of see this, this gap between the lows of 2024 and 2020. So in summary, the calculations and report demonstrate that there is capacity in the system for the proposed development factoring in known and potential future flows. Our analysis has also been reviewed by SLR and Arcadis, and they agree with that finding. The study factored in the I&I associated with a 1.8-inch rainfall event during a period of high groundwater. The documented SSO events demonstrate that the sewer between the proposed development and Stony Brook Pump Station has available capacity through the 5-year storm. Also, ongoing I&I rehabilitation projects will have a significant positive impact by reducing system flows and increasing available capacity in the system. The 2024 flow metering data does seem to suggest that it is working. And then finally, the $205,500 connection fee provides resources for future I&I projects that can eliminate enough infiltration to more than offset the increase in flow from the proposed redevelopment. Now, if you have any questions.
I've got a weird one, and it's kind of a curveball. The dewatering that's gone on to develop the Corbin project, how would that have affected some of the I&I that may have been included in this were it not dewatered?
Wow.
And that's not answerable, but it just occurred to me that when they did the Brooks Brothers building, they had to dewater to build a proper basement. He's done even more. And is that connected to the sewer, actually pumped into the sewer, the dewatering at Corbin?
Brothers? No, the dewatering.
Corbin. Where are they putting that water? Into
No,
that Stony Brook?
I'm not aware of any, they would have had to come to us.
They thought about it. I think
They would have tested the
yes.
water and gotten approval to discharge into our
I think they
sewer.
discharged to that drainage structure.
Yeah.
I'll ask David about that.
It should go to storm dewatering, and I guess you might have a very localized impact if you have some I&I around in the area.
Okay.
You might be dropping those groundwater levels, but the radius of the influence
Okay.
is not going to be
That's the weird question.
big enough to
That's why,
have an impact.
and there's a lot of rock too. He's chipped a lot of ledge. So
Oh
it
yeah,
wouldn't be
no, it's
my-
quite an excavation.
There are some older buildings along the post road that we suspect that may have been connected with sump pumps.
Oh really?
It proved not the case with one. There's quite a few that might have basements and maybe
Yeah.
connected. And they wouldn't need to use their sump pump because there's no groundwater. They're just throwing it out there. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll start at the beginning. The proposed buildings and where they're going to, it has to do with elevation. There's no changing where any of the buildings discharge to?
Yes, sir. The building A and the clubhouse, given their proximity to Thorndale Circle, are able to get out through that gravity line. But Hecker Avenue is above the remainder of the building, so we can't come out via gravity to the 8-inch in Hecker Ave. And so we are tying into that 12-inch that's in the northwest corner because we have enough vertical pitch to get there.
Okay. And the pool, I don't know, you said a 50-person pool. I don't know exactly what that is, square feet or gallons or whatever. But that has to be emptied, if I remember correctly, they've changed regulations, that has to be emptied into the sanitary sewer, correct, when it's empty?
I'm sorry, excuse me?
When you empty a swimming pool now,
Yes.
do you empty it into a sanitary sewer?
Not necessarily. The DEEP allows you to discharge it across a vegetated area if you get the chlorine down to, I think it's 0.5 parts per million.
Okay,
So
all right.
That's a general permit.
Okay. When you did these average flows, I have the proposed average flows. How is that calculated? Because apartments are 7 days a week, office buildings are 5.
So we use just the Connecticut State Health Code for that. So per the health code, you use 0.1 gallons per day per square foot of office space. And then it's 150 gallons per day for the first 3 apartments, and then 125 gallons per day for the remainder. I don't know how they calculate those numbers. That's just.
I mean, it just seems like you're skipping 30% of the week.
Yeah, I understand. Well, I mean, because you're looking at the peaking factors, so those are the average daily, and then that's if you were to scale back for the office, factoring in the fact that they're only in use 5 out of 7 days a week, then you might not be representing that peak flow coming out of it during peak time. So I guess that's what I can't speak to how they got the exact numbers.
Yeah, I'm just saying it doesn't, I mean, I run a wastewater treatment plant that serves an office building. And it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
And I'm living it. It's not in a vacuum. I'm assuming that all these apartments have their own separate air conditioners, and there is not a condenser unit and cooling towers?
There is not. I don't believe so.
Well, because side stream there to keep conductivity down could be discharged into the sanitary sewer. So that's why I'm asking that.
No, I would assume each one has their own individual units.
Okay.
I can confirm that. Yes. Yeah.
Is that a question that we need answered?
Wouldn't be that.
Because I'm making a list of the things for you.
Oh, thank you.
No,
In case
that
you
one's
were
not,
making-
that one's more of a,
All right.
I mean, that's just something I know about because of what I do and where I work. I assumed that they wouldn't have a common air conditioning for the buildings, but I don't know that for sure, but.
I'll write down, you'll let us know if the air conditioning is other than what you think.
I will. Yes.
She'll have their own.
And you're saying that the Connecticut one said, what was the number you said about the bedrooms and, where I work, they're proposing a development, and how they proposed it out of the regulations they got was 115 gallons per bedroom per day.
Okay.
And I don't know if they pulled that out of thin air or where they got that from, but that's WSP.
Okay, so the Connecticut Health Code just was updated to show to those new numbers so it's the 150 gallons just for the first 3 units and then 125 thereafter. But we have found in real world applications, it's actually from water data of finished buildings that's a pretty conservative estimate. But that's the industry standard, at least for Connecticut. When we use the Connecticut Health Code for that.
For an entire unit? Independent of how many bedrooms?
Or no, sorry, the per bedroom unit.
All right. Totally different. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, and Tom Nolan might be able to speak better to from SLR, yes.
Hey, members of the commission, my name is Tom Knowlton. I'm a professional civil engineer here in the state of Connecticut, work for SLR. So yeah, the Connecticut Public Health Code that Patrick was referring to is actually the code for subsurface sewage disposal systems, which, septic systems, which we don't have here. So it's actually a lot more conservative than when you actually discharge into a city or a town sewer collection system. So the numbers that he's quoting are actually from the most recent update that occurred earlier this year for the health code. And that's, like you said, 150 gallons per bedroom per day for the first 3 bedrooms. And then for every bedroom after that, it drops down to 125 gallons per day per bedroom. So that's how he came up with the total for the proposed development.
Okay, so compared to what I know, it's even more conservative, because I know
Yes.
115 per bedroom, straight all the way across the board. So, all right.
Yeah, the state wants to be more conservative with your subsurface sewage disposal system design, because they don't want problems with people's septic systems. So.
Okay. Wait, while you're up, since you wrote the, wait a minute, where is it? too many pieces of paper. Off-peak pumping one. Because I was the one who wanted it.
Do you want to talk about that now, or do you want Patrick to finish and you can ask questions to Patrick?
It's up to you. If you want to sit down, I can call you back.
Yeah, why
or-
don't we keep
All right.
going with Patrick? So,
Okay,
and I'll be happy to come back up to answer your question.
sure.
Thank you.
Oh, so when you were talking about Acadis' data outside of your sewer shed, you were using their data and then subtracting so that it was just your sewer shed, correct?
It's this,
On the West Avenue connection?
I was actually adding that into ours, so you can.
Adding it would have already been in there in the meter, so you would have had to subtract it to get just the watershed.
So you can see here, the sewer shed.
Sewer shed, shoot.
Oh, of course. The sewer shed was limited to just the area between, so here's the flow meter right here. And our sewer shed that we studied was limited to the area that's tributary to the pipe between the flow meter and our study point. So we basically just kind of did a sub sewer shed that was between the flow meter and our study point. So we were able to take the flow meter data and then add on these residential properties that you can see dotted in red, our property, and as well as Atria here, and add that to the flow meter data for the few properties that were between our study point and the flow meter.
Oh, okay, all right, sorry, I misunderstood that.
And you could then level that with the study point 4 or something and see how they jive. Get maybe get an I&I indicator of what's in the sewer shed there.
Oh yeah, so we were able to use the Arcadis data to calculate the anticipated I&I for those lengths of pipe, and so that's what you saw in the Arcadis response memo is they took the inflow number, they gave us an inflow number and infiltration number for just the Stony Brook sewer shed, the sub sewer shed, not all the other tributary ones, and then we scaled it based off of inch diameter mile of pipe. So we were able to calculate how much inch
and
pipe, and basically take a proportion of it relative to how much pipe is in upstream of those two study points.
That's cool. So we have a pretty good idea how this functions.
Yeah, so
Right
then,
here.
yeah, and then we have our flow meter, which helped verify it. So I think we calculated around like the 50% mark, and then for study point number 3, and then the real world conditions revealed by our flow meter were closer to 30%.
And all of your percentages in here are off of your 100% number, not the 92% theoretical number, correct?
Correct. They're all based off of full pipe capacity, the full pipe flow.
And when you added the 119 single-family residents that I'm assuming were on septic, on page 13.
Yes, so these are the 119 properties that are downstream. So you have study point number 2 right here.
Yep.
And then you have this is the study point number 3 sewer shed. So these properties are discharged to the 15-inch main between study point number 2 and number 3.
Oh, so you're saying that those fully occupied, multiple bedroom houses are the same as the average for Darien?
Yes, that's 191 gallons
Okay.
per day.
All right. I'll leave that alone, but, okay. And then, yeah, because, I mean, there's, none of those are one-bedroom condos or, or barely occupied homes or, yeah.
Well, so Darren provided me with a number that's.
No, but you're taking an average of the town and applying it to a part of town that people aren't, it's not gonna be there, they're gonna live there.
Mhm.
So it's a little different than the town as a whole.
And
Am I correct?
Yeah, sure.
And that's also why we installed the flow
Except
meter.
for one. Okay.
That's why we installed the flow meter though as well, because we were concerned about, or we weren't concerned, but we wanted to confirm because we made some assumptions in calculating study point 2 and 3. So that was one of the driving factors for putting in the flow meter right at study point 3, so that we could actually get real world data of what's being contributed to the system by the connected houses. So that's right here with the study point number 3 data verification. We put the flow meter in right at study point number 3 and found that the peak instantaneous flow rate measured was 0.94 CFS. So then we ran that whole calculation again, adding in the Thorndal Circle redevelopment.
And it made sense. Okay.
Yeah, so
All right.
we wanted to verify that because we agree there's a lot of theoretical numbers in these calculations, so it always helps to be able to hang our hat on something real.
Absolutely.
Bob, can I jump in real quick?
Go ahead.
Where the 15-inch and the 24-inch combined, is it a 90-degree angle plus or minus? I know for stormwater, there's always like a huge problem when you add something at a 90-degree to a stream. And here you've got the 24-inch coming into the 15-inch and then combining into a 24-inch. What goes on right there? What's happening right there hydraulically? I'm not an engineer. Is there scouring? Is there some sort of a deflector? Is it a sweep? Is it 90 degrees and here we go?
It is not a 90 degree. I can find exactly what it is and pull up the
Well,
photo, but it's not a 90 degree coming
I
in
could
there.
see it's, well, I would say, 80 something degree, it's close. And it's the wrong way. It's 90 degrees plus going
up
from the flow.
I sketched that in
Okay.
on the, like, if you're looking at this sewer shed exhibit.
Yeah.
This is a really old map, and
Okay.
since then, a new 24-inch main had been run through the
Okay.
field out there. So I was using as-built, I think from like the 80s or 90s, and just kind of approximating it in. So if it looks like a 90-degree angle, I would trust them.
I mean, if you're doing plumbing, and I know a little bit
Oh,
about
yeah.
building houses, you'd put a TY there and you'd get a sweep, and you'd combine that in a way where you don't do a 90-degree.
Definitely is
Okay,
90.
so
That would
this
have
is
been
just-
flagged immediately.
So this is just a sketch.
For needing rehab there.
If we were worried about anywhere in the system, is that a point we'd worry about because of the two combining together?
No. I
For
mean,
scouring, for anything?
based on what we've seen.
Looks good.
There hasn't been, any issues in regards to surcharging that we've seen.
Okay, cool.
Under, normal conditions or peak conditions.
Thank you. That's for one time to really bring the brain trust here. And
Of course,
we do our
I'm
best.
trying to pull up a photo of it.
You can tell we read everything, and I, all of us spend a lot of time, and we appreciate your time too.
Oh, of course.
And you guys.
And just
Thank
for
you.
the record, that was Lindsay McCarthy from
Yeah.
Arcade.
Oh, yes.
Well done.
Now when we get to the Stony Brook pump station,
Yes.
why do we switch the pumps from, to MGD as opposed to CFS? When we were talking about CFS this whole time?
So I was quoting in the Corbin District study, I believe that's where I pulled this information from. They had specifications on the pumps, and so that's directly quoted from them. So I could convert it to CFS.
To me, it becomes kind of, pushing the numbers towards your narrative. I'm sorry, I'm the cynic in the room.
Oh, no,
And unless, staying with one term throughout, to me, is much more transparent.
Yeah, and that was not my intention. I think that then the best number to look at is the fact that we did have the flow data, the discharge rate during Hurricane Ida, where we saw the pumps reach a capacity of 4.84 million gallons per day, but then converted to 7.49 CFS. I included that information about the pumps and what their operating point at that hydraulic head. That was just to provide some more specifics on the pumps
Well, was that
themselves.
for the whole day or momentary?
That was their instantaneous peak.
Okay. Okay, I'm good with this. Anyone else have any questions on this part?
No.
No, I'm just Would you like a recap of the things you're going to get?
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay, you're going to get us an updated document, including the peaking factor sheet.
Yep.
You're going to get us a document answering Peter's question on turbulent flow.
Mhm.
How little flow will be in the pipe at night.
If I goes well.
And the SSO list from 2003 to 2023.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that would you like Tom to come up now?
I would.
Yeah, I've got a couple.
Here's the chair.
Knock yourself out.
I'm going to come out way out of the box. I noticed on your CV that you worked in Stonington. And Stonington
Yes.
seemed to be, when I started looking at areas in the state that had major issues with I&I and/or capacity, Stonington jumped out.
Oh, yeah.
So tell us about Stonington. I'd love to hear.
Well, truth be told, I did not, or SLR did not work directly for the town of Stonington.
You just
We,
designed the
we
pump
worked,
station.
we worked for a private developer who was developing a piece of property that his family owned. And we were working with the town of Stonington to look at their system, do the downstream capacity analysis, that sort of thing. So I am familiar with the moratorium only because we were able to get our application in right before they came out with the moratorium. So our project was approved. It was the last project approved before the moratorium in 2019. But yes, they did have a moratorium because the I&I flows that they had in their system caused them to exceed their permit levels at their 3 treatment plants.
Wow.
So they hired a consultant to do an I&I study or SSES study, and then that turned into I&I abatement projects, similar to what you're doing here in the town of Darien. And they found some interesting things that were causing high I&I. They found a 6-inch pipe right on the river that was it was wide open on the end, and it was letting water in during high tide. It was letting a lot of water in. When they capped that 6-inch line, their flows dropped 8% in that sewer shed. So hopefully you don't have anything like that here. But with the I&I abatement that you're doing in the 3 phases, you're going to be removing a substantial amount of infiltration that you have in your system, which is great. You guys are ahead of the curve compared to some of the other towns in Connecticut. So.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Like I said, I think of the sewer system as the highway, I-95. And to me, you want to try and figure out ways to have people drive it in off hours. Whether they work a 12-hour shift or like I go to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, I can get down there no problem. So to me, the idea of storing and pumping off hours makes sense. And it just makes sense to me. And also when they're adding the water and pumping it, they're going to macerate it, so it's going to be a better sewerage. It's going to be less apt to cause problems down the line. And just, I hear your thoughts, or I saw your thoughts here. Some of them seem a little ticky-tack. I mean, telling me that there could be a storm at night, there could be a storm during the day where you've saved space for the storm water. So, I mean, it works both ways on that one.
It does.
And you could just have it so that you're storing 30,000 gallons and the pipe overflow goes to gravity. It doesn't have to, so that you're talking all this technical jargon, and I think it could be done very simply. And you're just pumping the tank, the stored water. So I would love to hear your thoughts on my thoughts.
Oh yeah, I love to drive in off-peak hours too, because I don't like when the highways are over capacity. But that's why I go into work at 5:30 every morning. But to your point, and that's a good analogy. When traffic designers design roadways, they do traffic counts. Kind of like we do the flow metering in the sewer lines. they design for peak times, which is typically at rush hour, right? In the morning when people are going to work, at night when they're going home from work. So they try to give enough lanes, give enough, capacity to the roadways for that time. And then of course, if you got a 6-lane highway that's jam-packed during rush hour at nighttime, like you said, if you're driving in to work either early or late at night, there's plenty of capacity, no doubt. But for sewer systems, they're typically designed for that peak, which is going to occur during the day when most users are using the sewer. So the reason I was asked to come and talk about pumping tonight was simply to answer any questions you might have, but also to point out that there's certain times where you use these engineering tools, and they are tools that can be implemented when you have issues, meaning downstream capacity issues that either can't or won't be fixed before the applicant is proposed to start discharging into the system. So for example, in our case, we have the elevations to be able to discharge by gravity, as Patrick pointed out, at 2 discharge points, and therefore pumping is not needed. But if our site was lower compared to the sewer main out in the street, we could design a pump station to pump out of our site, and that pump station would typically be designed with at least 2 pumps for redundancy. It would also be designed for the peak hour flow. So that peak hour, as Patrick pointed out, is a function of the average daily flow multiplied by the appropriate peaking factor for the proposed development, in this case our residential development. And then you'd have 2 pumps, each capable of pumping that peak hour flow rate, so that only one pump actually needs to operate at a time. So you have a redundant pump in case one pump, as you know, all things mechanical are going to go out, and of course they always seem to go out at the worst time, right? Holiday weekend, whatever. But that way, with 2 pumps, you have that redundancy so that you don't have an SSO on your site where you have your pump station. So like I said, we don't need that type of pump station here because we can discharge by gravity. But the flow dampening or flow equalization, I've heard it called both, that's basically where you have a downstream capacity restriction of some kind, and in order to be able to discharge, you'd have to discharge at a rate that is less than that constriction. So if that constriction is maybe a single pipe or maybe multiple pipes that are caused, like Patrick pointed out, when they did their flow projections and looked at the downstream capacity, they looked at the worst case pipe, right? The flattest pipe or the smallest diameter pipe. So if you have a situation where that flow restriction is less than your peak hour flow, because the peak hour is going to come out either by gravity or a pump station, if you had to have a pump station. So that peak hour is a critical number. And if you have a flow restriction downstream that causes you to have to somehow reduce that below the peak hour, that flow dampening or flow equalization is a good tool that you could potentially consider. So basically what that means is putting in a tank that you can collect your sewage flow and then pump out at a more steady rate throughout the day. So that pumping rate would be less than your flow restriction downstream. And then with peak or off-peak pumping, similar type concept, but that usually means that you have a flow restriction that's tied to a certain time of day or maybe more than one time a day. And if your flow restriction is basically nothing, down to 0, then you have to collect all that flow during that time where you otherwise can't discharge. And then you have to be able to pump it out or discharge it out at a time where the system, like you mentioned, the highways at night, right? They don't have a whole lot of cars. In our case, the sewer system doesn't have a whole lot of flow at night. So in that scenario, if you couldn't get out during the day because of a restriction downstream, then you could store it and pump it during those off-peak times, which is usually going to be in the evening, like you pointed out, because most people are asleep at that time, most businesses are closed at that time. You're going to have very little flow in your sewer system at that time. But in this particular case, for this particular development, since there is downstream capacity, as Patrick pointed out, that's really not necessary. And one of the disadvantages to putting in any pumping system, as you know, mechanical devices are going to fail. And there's going to be perpetual maintenance. There's going to be costs associated with that. With the added tankage, where you're collecting sewage, you're going to have odor. Even though these are buried tanks, they're still going to be vented so that the water levels can go up and down as needed throughout the day. So you're going to have to deal with those odors. And then the force main discharging out of those pumps is going to discharge into your collection system somewhere, probably into a manhole. And at that manhole, you're also going to have potential odor issues that anybody around that discharge manhole could potentially be calling the sewer commissioner of the town to say, hey, all of a sudden I got these sewer odors that I never had before. What's going on? So you got to consider, getting rid of that odor both at the source, at the tank, and then at the downstream. So there's ways to do that with carbon filters. There's ways to do that with chemical addition. But again, that's all things that are added cost, more added maintenance, and if it's really not needed, I prefer not to put in a mechanical device when a simple pipe and gravity flow would do what we need it to do.
Okay.
And you're stating this because downstream, we have capacity.
Correct. Yeah, like I said, I was just asked to come tonight to talk about those different pumping options and when you might consider using them and what the ramifications are of using those. So in a real world example, in the case of that Stonington development that I mentioned, we actually had a downstream capacity restriction. It was a pump station just downstream of our proposed site, and we talked to the town of Stonington about it, and they said, well, we don't have a plan to upgrade those pumps right now, maybe someday, but not right now. So you guys could either pay to upgrade the pumps, or you could put in your own little tank and pumping system to do that flow dampening or flow equalization. So we would be pumping, more during the day, not a full 24 hours, but we would be pumping out at a more constant rate throughout the day, so that downstream pump station would never be overwhelmed, even during their peak times. In that particular instance, we didn't have to consider off-peak pumping, because by doing the flow dampening, we were able to come down to a number where we could get in with the capacity available at that pump station. However, during the course of putting together a preliminary design on that and estimating the volume of the tank, the size of the pumps we would need, the town came back to us and said, hey, we started looking at other properties in that sewer shed that could be developed, and you guys aren't the only ones, so we're just going to upgrade those pumps. So it worked out perfectly for my client, because they didn't have to pay for that upgrade, and then we didn't have to do the flow dampening. So
If you were doing flow dampering, you would also be macerating the sewerage?
any pump that you want to put on sewage needs to have cutter blades, or you're gonna chop it up because you want to be able to move it. But with gravity, anything that can be flushed down the toilet, put down the sink, that's what's coming down your pipe. Yeah, and as long as you have enough flow to give you the scour velocity that you need to keep those solids moving, then you're fine.
You don't know how many cell phones I've seen.
Would you ever recommend that as a large landlord, they put in their leases that wipes and other things are not to be flushed down the toilet at all?
Yeah, those packages that say flushable wipes are not, you might be able to flush them, but they're not, as you know, they're not good for sewer systems.
Kids' toys are flushable too.
That's true. There's a lot of things that people can get down into the sewer that really shouldn't be there, but yeah, if depending on what you have downstream at like that pump station, and I don't know, Patrick didn't really touch upon that because it's an existing facility, but depending on the type of pumps you have in there, or if you have a muffin monster or something on the inlet coming into that, then you already have the capability of chopping up whatever comes down the line.
I was only worried there's a lot of low slope pipes from the site and concrete, and they may be rough, not conveying as easily. Maybe that could be a problem.
Well, I don't know how many sewer videos you've watched being a member of the sewer commission, but there's times where some of the stuff will come to a skidding halt, and then as flow builds up behind it and you get enough flow going, then it starts moving again. And when the pipe's flowing, like you mentioned, up to potentially 80%, you're going to have the scour velocity that you need to get those solids moving again. So,
but okay, then kind of going backwards, if in theory we're taking out so much I&I at night, are we gonna start building up things in the pipe where we would want to do off hours pumping to help out the ultimate health of our system?
it depends on what people are flushing, but obviously some things, like if you're up at 2 a.m. and you happen to flush whatever down the toilet, it might get out to the main, and then some of the solids might stop right there out in front of your house. And then in the morning, when more people start showering and using water, and that flow starts coming down the line, those solids will then be resuspended and move on down the line to the pump station. So throughout the course of the day, you have different things coming down the line that may not stay in suspension. They may settle out somewhere, and then as flows increase throughout the day, evening, those things will get washed down the pipe.
Yeah, hopefully you reach scouring velocity and it clears it out.
Oh yeah, as you increase flow, and like in the mornings, that's usually your peak on residential domestic flow, is people are getting up, showering, getting ready for their workday.
Yeah, 9 to 11 is usually where the charts show it.
Yeah.
Get up late.
Except on Super Bowl Sunday.
What is that, halftime?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think they did present, I think Redness and me did present that our pump station in their development, in their packet, our pump station has 3 pumps and they've only ever used 2, is that correct?
No.
No.
When it rains, all 3 are flat out.
All 3 are flat out when it rains. Oh,
Yeah.
Heavy,
okay.
heavy, but, yeah.
Well, we've had some heavy rains.
Well, but the odds are the total of the 3 of them is less than what you're actually pumping. The pipe can't support the
Absolutely.
discharge of 3 pumps.
Absolutely, it's not, you can't just add them up, that's correct.
So does that bring us back around to needing to do flow dampening?
No.
No, okay.
No, it's just a question I've asked before of other
Oh, I know.
projects, and I'm asking again.
That's a great question, and if you do have other applicants that come before the commission where you actually have, they've done the downstream capacity analysis and have determined there's a choke point that is less than what their peak hour flow would be out of that development, then you could even tell them, hey, why don't you consider flow dampening and, look into it, right? Because it's a
Well,
great
but
tool that could be
But I see other
implemented.
benefits that we're agreeing to disagree over. Like I said, the macerated sewerage and the continual flow 24 hours a day, I see as both good things. Yes?
Something. This is Lindsay McCarthy from Arcadis. In regards to your question on, is there still gonna be flow in the pipe if we eliminate all the I&I? I mean, that goes back to what we had in the report and what Rennis and me covered today, is that any of these I&I projects, while it would be wonderful to remove 100%, it varies. We use 75% as, the number in our SSES report varies depending upon sewer shed and conditions and all of that, but 75% is what we use. So essentially, there will still be the nighttime just sewer use flow in there, in addition to still some I&I in the system.
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering if it's gonna drop below, what is it, 2 feet per second, so the solids drop out of suspension. And I'm thinking that could cause issues, but that's just, again, a question I'm throwing out there.
You're correct, 2 feet per second is scour velocity, right?
I remember, it's been a while since I've taken the test, but yeah. Okay, I'm done.
Peter? Come on. Really?
Thank you.
You're the smartest guy in the room.
Excellent. We've been asking questions all
I
along.
thought it was well presented.
Darren, do you have a question?
No, can we have Lindsay support her conclusions?
That'd be great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any questions? I can stand up if you have any additional questions for me, since.
Well, quick one on the I&I, 75%, is that 75% of the fixable I&I, like our pipes and not sump pumps? Or 75%, including 25% is the sump pumps, you'll never get to all of them?
So the number that we used in the SSES report, so it's the infiltration that we were able, when we reviewed, the CCTV videos in addition to the manhole inspection reports. So it doesn't add in any inflow into that number. It's
Okay.
just the straight infiltration,
Yeah.
75%. With some of the work that we are doing, it is also mitigating inflow from entering the system. So that's, as I mentioned, the watertight framing covers, the inflow protectors, and some that we are raising above grade. So those will help to mitigate the inflow, but that isn't factored actually into that infiltration rate.
And what did we assume, this goes back 4 or 5, when we first contacted you guys, how did we split that up, sump pumps and fixable stuff? What was the ratio of the two possible?
In regards to?
Our total life inflow, I&I.
Oh, there's no, basically for the inflow is just, it's the direct inflow that we see and the delayed inflow.
Okay.
So the sump pumps
Delayed.
fall into delayed inflow.
Yeah, got it.
So,
Yeah, I looked that up. I looked your chart up.
So
Yeah.
bang for the buck, I know this is totally off kilter here. It's like 4.2 houses with sump pumps is this whole development in terms of impact-ish. Maybe it's 5. That's, to me, mind-blowing that we don't aggressively look at that as a problem. When we're here, and you guys are spending a great deal of money, and we really appreciate the talent level and the reports and everything else to help us understand not only what your development is, but what our system is. We really appreciate that. But if it's 5 houses that don't care, equal to this, and this is what we're putting the importance of that on, it's mind-blowing to me.
sump pumps is a very challenging topic for all municipalities. It is something that isn't a quick fix. As you guys all know, it's been discussed.
Well, we all come from different boards, and wetlands, and then planning and zoning, and flood mitigation, and now here. And we would see a lot of homes being developed with 9-foot basements in a known wetland. And we would say, really? And 4 sump pumps and,
24/7.
you know, what are you gonna do? Pump it out in the yard and it's gonna keep back, and they build a brand new house.
Supposed to.
Here's your new house. So our history goes back further in this problem.
Yeah, and that's,
But I think we're going to look at that. I'm hoping
Yeah.
we're going to look at that,
Oh, that's
and
next.
we can be a leading town
yeah, absolutely.
in coming up with a way to handle
Yep.
how you find out who has sump pumps.
Yep, and there, we have worked with communities, have taken, on that whole sump pump investigation program, and it's a lot of work, but you can sometimes see amazing results with it, so.
Oh, good,
And we
because
appreciate
we
everything
can,
you've done,
we can count on you to help us,
Yeah.
since you have experience.
We'll find them.
Sign you up. Okay.
Thank you for everything you guys have
Absolutely.
done.
Yeah,
So
any other
what's your
questions?
opinion of off-hour pumping?
I don't think it's applicable here. I don't think it's needed. There's definitely enough capacity in the sewer from what we looked at, even when we had initially the higher peaking factor, based on, our comments, we were still comfortable with that. We had that further discussion, and, now we feel comfortable with the 80% as well, and that should have enough capacity for what they're adding. I do concur as well with, adding in a pump station brings on its own, challenges. The thing that we find the hardest is O&M of these stations when it's at a development. The town doesn't have as much control over it, and that can then lead for, more issues right there, SSOs, things like that. So in this instance, I don't think it's necessary. We have, with other communities, required it, but that was because there was no capacity downstream. So I feel like you have another question.
I do, but I don't know exactly how to formulate it, so I'll keep it quiet. It's gonna sound like gook.
In your, this is completely off topic, but you have a number of pipes, the material of which was unknown. Do you now know what those pipes are?
As we're doing the CCTV
You're-
investigations,
you're
yes.
updating.
That's information that's recorded, absolutely. It's being
Okay.
updated in the GIS
I was
system. so.
surprised at all the unknowns. I'm like,
Yeah, I mean, that's
unknowns?
definitely some, as you're building a GIS system, that, the critical information length and all of that's in there. And then sometimes
Okay.
getting that additional information in there is.
Well, it'd be good for us to have that information down the road.
Absolutely. I mean,
As much
and-
information as we can get about the system.
Yeah, in addition to previous rehab, that's,
Right.
being incorporated, which helps us guide our, investigations as well. Don't want to investigate rehab to pipe if it's not necessary, so.
Thanks. And the level of detail, you picked up on the fact that Renison Mead had an incorrect pipe type in their
Live and breathe it. so.
evaluation. I was like, boy, that is impressive. They are really looking at these, that they know this was PVC.
Details, so.
So kudos to you.
Sorry to keep swirling back to off-hour pumping.
Swirling.
but-
Yeah,
Yeah. This direction above the equator, that direction below the equator. So, you're saying you believe that the only time to do it is for capacity-related issues. There are no other benefits of off-hour pumping.
I mean, what we have done in the past is always due to capacity issues, so.
That's unfortunately not what I asked.
Yeah. I mean, there might be cases where, but I don't think it's necessary here.
Okay, any other way of dealing with wipes or something in the pipe, other than dealing with it at our pump station?
Yeah, we've been working with the town. I mean, they do hand out notices. I believe they go in the sewer bills. But we, we are working on some more
But I don't
education
even, in an
materials.
apartment, I don't even know if the bills go to the
Got it.
occupants.
That could be something
They may
that was
go to
worked
the
with.
homeowner, the landowner, the landlord, excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that could be something absolutely that's worked with, the property owner, the property manager. That it's information that is, distributed to all the
Put it in the lease.
people and, yeah, I mean,
Right in the lease.
like I said, 1,000 pages of things in the lease, but, yeah, I mean, that's the way that we've been dealing with educational materials and.
Okay.
Bob, are you talking about what you previously called a comminutor?
A comminutor is a grinder, and maceration is grinding it up.
So do they ever put comminutors into a system where you have not also put in a tank? Can you require them to put a comminutor into their system to help chop things up before it gets to our system?
Clog.
No?
It would.
This
Yeah.
is just me saying.
You-
To put it into the gravity sewer?
You would
is
still
that-
have to
it
have a
would reduce-
bypass of some sort, whether it was a manual bar rack or whatever, and again, that would go back to what they're trying to avoid, the maintenance.
Okay.
But I don't know. I'm
Because aren't those built
trying to
into-
weigh one against the other. Maintenance against the other issues.
When we did the Darien Nature Center, we were pumping upgrade. So we had to put a grinder in the ground. You just can't acquire or put one of those in something like
Well, that's
this.
a pump. That's because you're pumping. It's
Right.
a chamber.
I see. So
and
the pump goes
and
with the
and the
comminutor.
Yeah,
impeller
the bottom of the pump has
are
the.
cutting the knives, which cut up
Okay.
the material and then send it out.
So you can't have one without the other, you need both.
Kind of.
Okay,
You could, but again, it's going back to maintenance.
right. But you don't need the huge tank that they have to put underground.
It would still have.
I mean,
to be-
that's like two, oh, you would?
Yeah.
Oh, well, then never mind. It won't work. That's my ignorance on how this all works.
That's why we're here to answer questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
All good?
I think so.
All right.
Does anyone else in the audience have anything to say?
Sorry, just one thing, it made me think when you were talking about the sump pumps. So, just as an aside, the town of Greenwich did their sewer study, they did CCTV inspection, they found 1,100 illicit connections. And what they mean by illicit is stormwater connections, so whether it's roof leaders, sump pumps, catch basins in a parking lot at a commercial establishment, whatever. So they actually worked with their town attorney to send out a letter to all 1,100 of those property owners and told them they had 9 months to remove that. Otherwise, they would be charged so much a day or what have you. And then the town of Stonington, when they were having all their problems with I&I, they actually did something similar, but they developed an ordinance, had an ordinance passed by their sewer, their WPCA, where if they actually found that there was a sump pump connected, they could charge that user $100 a day until they disconnected it. So, there are things that the commission could pass, make an ordinance that if you do find something like that, where you could tell somebody they have so many days to remove it, or they could be fined, that sort of thing.
And the
So-
Greenwich attorney went so far as to say they had the right to go and inspect the property, didn't he? It was a
I
legal
believe
attorney.
he did, yes.
I was surprised. It was
Yes.
a little,
Yeah, they went pretty far, yeah, but
And did
they really needed it because they got capacity issues due to I&I, and they had to take serious action, so. But anyways, just wanted to point that
If
out.
you're gonna come up and
Thank you.
broach this, then I have a quick question. My theory, or my thought is not doing it that way, but my thought is when the property is sold, that the lateral has to be cambered. In which case, the cammering people are on our side because they're coming off our list.
Yeah.
And they would have to report the sump pump.
That's
What do you
also-
think of that?
That's also another good way to do it. Of course, if somebody lives in that house for 30 years before they sell it,
They don't
and
know.
that sump pump's pumping out all the time. But I think, if Arcadis does the CCTV inspections and they find a property or a house that has a sump pump discharging, it would be nice if you could send them a letter and have some teeth behind it, right? But
We were thinking
Teeth
too.
are helpful.
One of our staff, Ed actually came up with a great one, just send out an affidavit with the bill. Do you have a sump pump, yes or no? And sort of create a registry of properties that might, give an incentive to report back one way or the other, and maybe a disincentive to not report.
Yeah.
An extra fee or something. I thought that was clever
I like
too.
the fees.
yeah, as long as you get honest answers, that would work.
Oof.
That would work great.
It's still wear and tear on the system.
Sorry to get a little off track there. But
We're gonna cover that on item 5.
yeah, but
Fine,
to hold
yeah.
them here, I'm apologizing.
All right,
Yes.
back to the lawyer.
Evening, folks. Thanks so much for your time this evening. My name's Jay Klein. I'm an attorney at Carmody Law,
Oh, okay.
representing the...
I was going to ask because I forgot.
Totally cool. Totally cool. It's nice to be with you all this evening. But just wanted to clarify, or really wrap up, just the informative testimony that we heard from three separate, well-credentialed, well-qualified, well-experienced engineers, really on the key issues before you. Is there capacity to approve this connection? Yes. And are we appropriately discussing whether overnight pumping or any other mechanical solution is necessary? And you heard from all three experts here that no, they feel that's not necessary or appropriate in this instance. I know, and Ms. Cameron, I was taking notes too, so we'll compare notes maybe perhaps
Yeah.
afterwards. We want to make sure that you all have all the information that you feel you need to approve this connection for this terrific project. If you feel that way this evening, and those questions are maybe perhaps more informative for maybe global policy questions and not necessarily relevant to or not relevant, but not necessary to approve a connection for this specific project, we'll certainly work with staff to get those answers to you as soon as possible anyway. But if you feel you're in a position and have the information and answers you need to approve a connection this evening, we would obviously welcome that as well. So want to make sure we're all on the same page and feel good about where this process is.
Would we be overreaching to ask you to include something in your lease agreement with the tenants about flushables?
I think that's something that we'd have to look into. We would agree to some method of educating our tenants on the negative impacts of non-flushables. Whether that's language that can be put into a lease specifically. I was talking to my client, well-versed in landlord-tenant law. I'm a zoning guy, not necessarily landlord-tenant law. And he explained to me that may not be something that we can legally incorporate into a lease, but we're certainly willing to provide educational materials to tenants on those, perhaps in the welcome package when folks move in, a handout or something like that. And we can work with Lindsay as to the timing of that education and the most effective way of that education to get the message to folks who are moving in. We've presented this project to your colleagues at the EPC, and we're already talking about educating our future residents on issues of environmental sustainability and protecting natural resources. That's something that can be wrapped up quite nicely in the programmatic facet of this community that we're putting together. I just don't know that the lease is the best way for us to do it, but it's something we're willing to do, certainly.
Okay.
Well, on
At the-
P&C, we normally would close the public hearing. Is this a public hearing? I guess this isn't technically a public hearing, and then deliberate on another date. However, we met regularly, like almost every week. Can we deliberate later in the meeting? Do we?
It's
How's everyone else?
quarter after 6.
Well, I would.
We still have a full agenda
Yeah.
of items.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
I
Peter, let's hear what-
You're the.
No, no, go ahead, my
I
mistake.
mean, I would think that we kind of table this till next meeting. 'Cause
Get the
we've
additional
heard a
material.
lot,
Okay.
there's a lot to think about. And, I mean, I think it's been very complete, but we really have to have a kind of a meeting of the minds here.
okay.
And I wasn't trying to be pushy or anything like that.
No.
As I said, I want to
No,
make
that's a
sure
good
we're
question.
answering
It
your
was a good
questions.
question.
But, and
Correct.
I will give my opinion on this. We basically have the infamous one bite at the apple. So I don't want my name to be associated with anything bad,
Understood, yeah.
more than it already is. So, believe me, I feel like I'm a steward for the environment, and I feel like that, you know, the town doesn't know what I do, the townspeople, but I don't care that. I still try and do the best I can.
Yeah.
And asking the questions I ask, even if I'm out on an island, I have no problem asking them.
No, yeah.
But for you to ask and have me give a decision this quickly, I don't think that's quite fair. I think as someone in the industry but not an engineer, I do have to have a little bit of time
Sure.
for it to settle.
Certainly. No, we're happy to get you that additional information. We, you know, our team certainly did their diligence. Someone that Pat walked in a little bit after Patrick started, the current owner of the property, Jerry Nielsen, here today too. You know, we all are really proud of the project here because of the time that we've spent on it. Understand that you folks want to have an opportunity to spend time on it as well. We'll get that list that Ms. Cameron put together. We'll make sure to have responses ready for you. I don't know, and I apologize, I don't know when your next meeting is, if this is something that would take place later in the month or.
Going to be
or in
August, so it'll be the second Tuesday. Excuse me.
Could you guys make a meeting in between?
I mean, we can. I
I've been
mean,
on the other end of this.
I don't have a problem making a meeting in between. I just need a little bit of time to digest. I mean, actually moving some of the other issues or items to then might make sense too, since it's already 20 minutes after 6.
Darren, what would that process be like if we were just to say, if we can?
Sorry, we haven't done it.
Within
No,
the
no,
next
no.
2 weeks? Do we have notice?
Special meeting?
Are you away? Are
We'd
you
have to
away?
notice a special meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to notice a special meeting for sure.
For how long in advance? 48 hours beforehand? What would-
Yeah.
Okay. So if we,
That
when
would
do you
be
leave?
sufficient.
I leave on the 17th,
So if we could do it before the 17th?
not on the 16th.
No, I know. I'm not gonna make you late for your plane. But I-
16th is a Wednesday. It'd be the.
I leave
5th
very early
It'd be
on
the 5th, wait a minute, today's the 2nd. So,
Yeah.
no, it would be the 16th. Yeah, we'd have to, I can make a Monday. Sorry.
Yeah.
We're keeping you guys here for this. But yeah, unfortunately, we don't feel comfortable giving a decision tonight, but I think we're comfortable in expediting
Yeah.
it and not waiting a
Yes.
month.
Okay.
Yes.
So we're willing
I
to
agree
work with
that.
you, you just gotta work with us.
Yeah, do you want us to maybe coordinate with Darren on the date, or the 15th is fine? We are going to be here with your friends on the P&Z Commission next Tuesday. I don't know if that's too quick a turnaround.
Would you be that, when does P and Z start, 8?
7 o'clock.
Oh, it's 7, okay.
7? When did they start meeting?
Oh. My God.
I know. What happened to 8 o'clock?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So I could do it next Tuesday. That would be,
Then what is the date? Tuesday?
today is a Tuesday and that's the 9th.
9th? Yeah.
And I don't think these, to get us the updated document that you had presented
Yeah.
should be like overnight. You
Should
can
be
do
good,
that.
yeah. We'll make a
Including that
copy.
peaking factor sheet. The question from Peter on the turbulent flow, could you get that to us by the end of the week?
Yeah, by the end of the week, yes.
That would be great, because we'd love the weekend to look at it, especially if it's an.
Well, the problem with the end of the week is we wouldn't get it until Monday. Because the office is closed on Friday, sorry.
I mean, it's not a huge document.
I'm not.
though.
It's not
I'm
a
not-
huge document.
Yeah, no, it's fine with me, I'm just throwing it out there.
And the
that's all.
SSO list is just a personal
Yeah.
thing I would like to have. So that has nothing to do with whether the evaluation of this.
All right, then I'll make a motion that we schedule a meeting for next Tuesday, a special meeting.
Tuesday the 9th?
Tuesday the 9th.
Okay, and remember Thursday's a holiday also.
Yes.
Yeah, this Thursday.
Yep.
But I think most of this stuff they could get to us tomorrow,
All,
because it already exists.
Yeah, 2 of them I can send in, so it's just about calculating or confirming the velocity and the pipe.
And then whatever notice you need to make there ahead of time.
I'm gonna have to slam the
Yeah.
gavel here, you keep talking.
Do you have time?
Well, I'm making a motion. Chairman can't make a motion.
I'm the vice chair. I need a second.
Oh, I'd second that.
Well, do we know, Darren, that you can manage that? Get a room and everything?
Excuse me?
Next Tuesday.
For next Tuesday.
4:30.
Next
At 4:30.
Tuesday, 4:30.
We'll find a room.
We'll
Yeah,
find a room, okay.
yeah, but you
I'll second it.
Okay, he's a tabler,
No,
right?
Peter seconded to be
Oh, Peter
Oh, I'm
seconded.
sorry.
perfect,
Okay, Reese,
Reese
Van
and
Winkle.
Peter.
All those in favor? 4-0 with Craig abstaining.
Okay, so
No,
next
he's
Tuesday.
recused.
Recusing, abstain, well, no, he abstained.
No, you-
Okay,
Gonna walk back in, Bob?
yes.
Not even here.
Thanks so much for your
Okay.
time.
Yes.
Thank you.
guys.
Would you guys like to take 3 minutes?
Yes,
Okay.
my eyes are kind of floating.
All right, we're gonna just take, Sewer Commission's gonna take a quick break now, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes to continue our meeting. Thank you, Channel 79.
That's just the way I am.
Oh, no.
All right, Channel 79, if you are listening,
Excited home viewership?
we're gonna restart the meeting at 6:26 p.m. I think the next item number 4, involves Lindsay as well a little bit, so we want to cover that one now
Is he sure?
tonight. So
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
I have it queued up.
Looking for it.
Oh, look at you.
So,
He wants
you
to go
you
on.
might recall, Ed told you folks that he was gonna move some of the stuff that was planned for Phase 3 into Phase 2, because there was some low-hanging fruit he didn't want to ignore. One of them was Birch Road, and one of them was Mechanic Street, sewer subsheds. Anyway,
Sub-sewer
this
sheds?
is, the manhole
Sally sells she-shells.
that I'm gonna show you, I think.
Ooh, pretty.
Nice bird.
we approve of your
Are
wallpaper.
you flipping us the bird?
It's not my computer. Okay, this is Birch. So this is
Oh, wow.
a very big source of infiltration.
that
Ed
new?
asked that I show you this. Play again.
What's the date of the
Very
video,
short.
approximately?
Excuse me?
Date of the video?
I do not know.
So that's a newer pipe, but it wasn't grouted properly, or did it have to be protruding in and then
Coming
grouted?
in right alongside the bench wall. Now, did we repair these yet?
Which manhole is that?
This is the one in Birch, on the elbow of Sylvan, I believe.
Oh,
I think you grouted these. I think you reported to us that you grouted them.
manhole number on the name of that file?
I believe they've done that work already.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm pretty sure that's what you reported to us. And here is the one that I just showed you on Mechanic Street.
Oh,
And
whoa.
I'm pretty sure that that one was also, see that?
That's all
Coming
ground?
alongside the pipe.
Oh, okay.
Oh, down there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
still.
this is a
that's
drop
lot.
coming in
It's
alongside
ridiculous.
the pipe. It's just roaring in there. So those are the 2 locations that Ed took out of the Mechanic Street and the Birch sub-sewer sheds and brought them into
Is that the one?
Phase 2
It's in the same
from Phase
sub-sewer
3.
shed.
Yeah.
Okay. That one's grouted, right?
So yeah, they've started rehab on this one. What they've done thus far is they've done the grouting, but we also recommended bench and invert repair, adding a drop pipe so that that flow coming out of the lined pipe isn't dropping directly into the invert, because that is holding back the flow coming down Boston Post Road, and also cementitious lining.
So it's disturbing the flow.
Yes, that's definitely part of it. So, and we're gonna add that drop pipe in, so it's gonna come onto the bench and then we'll essentially have an invert from the bench flowing into.
You're doing an inside drop, not an outside drop, right?
Inside drop, yes.
That's not the manhole that's popping in front of Goodwife Shopping Center,
No.
though? Okay.
We're actually doing one across the street as well at that's the one at West Avenue, west at Boston Post Road. We're actually
Yeah, this is on the tie
Yes.
pitch inside the West Avenue.
So we're
side.
adding one as well, mechanic at Boston Post Road as well. Similar thing where there's a lot of infiltration coming in, not a drop pipe, but all the same recommendations.
Oh, that's cool.
I don't know if I'm breaking any rules here. You're gonna need a computer, right? You're gonna need this?
For
Are you gonna set your computer up to show them things?
that,
You're done?
Is this
oh,
down?
I'm fine, I don't need
Okay,
to.
then I'll stop.
I
this.
only have pictures, I don't have a video of the other manhole that's.
Oh, okay, then I'll hold it.
Okay.
This is, what's up on the screen queued up is, let's see, 7B.
All right, go
Let's
ahead,
not
take
jump
it.
to that.
Oh, you can take it out of order.
I was only gonna do that because I thought
Oh,
Lindsay
okay.
needed the machine and I would just be done and but it sounds like she doesn't need to use her machine.
Okay.
So, thanks.
So we don't know what the mystery element is yet.
This is suspense builds. Waiting to see this. There's 5 people in town that have been
I
waiting to see this.
I'm sorry. You need the,
Plus our home audience.
Wait a minute.
Bated breath.
He's gonna guess. What are you writing down a guess or something?
Voting on.
What about Bob?
Oh, yeah, let's move on from that. All right, so we have completed item 4, and those videos were constructive, thank you.
Yeah.
So I do want to be conscious of the fact that it's 6:30. How is everybody feeling about time? Item 5 is probably a longer discussion than a shorter one.
Let's table that then.
Let's table that.
Okay, so let's just everybody got the 2-pager that I put together based on our
Yep.
conversation at the last hearing.
I would love a copy of that.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Anyone else want a copy? I happen to have it.
No, I haven't. I haven't had a chance to read it because I
Okay.
was very busily matching numbers.
Understood.
for
All right, so
days.
again, it was just an attempt to start getting our conversation down in writing about going after illicit discharges.
And you heard what Tom had to say. No, because you weren't part of the meeting.
I was listening.
You were listening,
Oh, I was
so
listening.
he had some thoughts
Good.
as well. Stonington has an ordinance,
And Greenwich.
and
Two good
Greenwich
ones.
went after some
I need to get a
1,100
copy
illegal
of that.
connections.
Here you go.
So if we can.
All right, so we'll table
that.
Yeah.
5.
Thank you for doing that.
Do you want to do that in August?
yeah, that was.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's do that in August. And then, Darren, I guess I'll ask you to be brief, and if you think something is unimportant and can be tabled,
What you
let's
guys-
table it, but if not, please
Okay.
go through the rest of the agenda.
Motion to table?
Oh,
Yeah,
I'll move to table.
A second.
5.
Okay, Cam Hutch?
Yep.
Thank
All
you.
in favor? Yes,
Oh.
okay.
What about Leeuwarden? Do we need to discuss it?
Okay,
6?
Leeuwarden, it's 6:32. There is a letter in the package. The commission asked us to send
Yep.
a letter to the owner and get them to map out the sewer, provide us with an as-built drawing. That letter's included in your package.
Great.
Thank you.
Yep.
Next.
Okay.
7A, status of Phase 2?
Status of Phase 2, we have the expert here, but I can tell you what she told us. All the cured-in-place pipelining is done, and the sewer manhole grouting is done, and 45% of the cement lining in the pipes, 25 frames and covers. They're doing 5 per day when they're moving along, and we still have more to do. So we're working through some of the sidewalk issues, and the chamber
assume-
inspection is still remains to be done at the station.
Do we have an estimated completion date from the contractor?
They have until August 30th. If there's a few decisions we still have to make, we're hoping they should be able to meet by August 30th, but there was some additional work that's being added.
Oh, that's
added
right,
to the
yeah.
contract, so,
Which is good
the
then.
goal is still to end by that original Phase 2 contract end date, but it might go a little bit over depending upon when they can start that additional lining work.
And I imagine there might be a small handful of stuff that has a long tail and
Yeah, because it's like, once they can't finish everything until they do the lining. So once they do the lining, then they can grout the service connections or line the laterals, and then finish up some manholes if we have work if needed, so.
Excellent. Well, since you're here, what is our projected schedule on the Phase 3 CDs and going to the street on that? Do we have a projected schedule yet?
Yeah, so we're hoping to start design this kind of like the tail end of the summer. I think the goal is putting it out to bid in the fall, like later fall, and then putting it out to bid early 2025. So January, February timeframe, so that they basically have that awarded notice to proceed once the weather's starting to get good.
I remember they actually didn't mind doing the lining in January and February.
Yeah, with the weather that we've been having lately, it shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah.
If it does get too cold, then they can't work. But it's only been a handful of days I've ever encountered that in my entire career, that it's been too cold for the lining crew to work. So,
we're eager.
yeah, no, absolutely. And honestly, there's so much stuff beforehand that before they can even get out into the lining, they have to submit submittals and
video
do
the pipe
cleaning and
clean
televising
it,
of the pipe, and then order the liners and then get the liners in. So
Has the lining technology changed, or is it still steam with the expansion?
So UV is starting to become a little bit more, I've been hearing about it a little bit more in projects, but right now it's more beneficial on larger diameter pipes. For smaller diameter, like the cost of it is, it's still more than traditional steam cure. So we have the option in our specifications that the contractor can cure via steam, water, or UV.
In case the price comes down and it meets that.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be a little bit before. More companies are starting to become involved in UV, and once there's more people that are doing it, it will be more competitive and things like that. So, but yeah, as of right now, I haven't.
Is there any difference in the end product once it's cured of one versus the other?
I've heard that there is more strength to the UV cure. For larger diameter pipe, it is also preferred because there's a lot less setup. I don't think they need to take off the frame and cover, because basically if you have a 36 diameter pipe, the frame and cover is only 24 inches. So they have to remove the frame and cover, remove the chimney, sometimes remove, the core bowl of it. So they have to get down there in order for them to invert the liner. So, and there's just a lot less trucks and everything involved as well with UV.
So you can haul it into the smaller opening.
Yeah.
With the
Just got
UV.
a little UV.
That's cool.
Yeah, I know. We have a couple projects and I'm hoping to get on site and see it, so.
How do you manage flow while you're lining a pipe?
So they plug it, depending on how large the pipe is, they'll either plug it and bypass it from the manhole that they're actually working from, and then they'll run the hose and then discharge it downstream into a downstream.
Okay, so you're always bypassing.
Yeah. If for some reason there's very minimal flow, they'll just monitor it, but for the most part, they have.
Plug it up and go quick.
Yeah, right. If it's like for example, if it's the start of a line on a residential street where there's no connections coming in, or there's one house,
Plug
then maybe
it and go.
it's not gonna be an issue, but I've never seen them not use a bypass.
Well,
It's just the size of the bypass.
They put a notice on my house, they're gonna be doing this for this time.
Oh, yeah.
Try not to flush the toilet.
That's right, you're in the neighborhood, you
Yeah.
do a lot of work.
It's very cool.
Yeah. Those notifications.
Any other questions under Phase 2 rehab? Well, time to unveil, Darren.
Here's one that went wrong.
Aligning operation, you say.
Oh, we can blame it on Ed, he's not here.
He's listening in still? Are you still here?
It actually,
No, he's
this was
not.
lined about 30 years before Ed decided to come here, but.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
This was lined, really? Looks.
Yeah,
It looks
so
like
you see the ridge in the
rib.
center?
Yes.
I'm kind
Yeah.
of glad Lindsay's here so
Was that
we
a
could
power line?
give her credit. I think she was out there till 2 o'clock in the morning. You can see the flow line on this pipe, right? So it's flowing full all the time.
This is bypassed right now, just to
Yeah.
add that they bypassed the
Lindsay
flow.
was with them and made them bypass, and
What was that?
it didn't start until
A railroad
after 9
track?
o'clock at night when the Sienna Bar closed.
Wait a minute, where are we?
So what do we think?
The post road.
This is a
From-
post road,
But
right?
no, but I'm saying if we're at that line most of the time, this sounds like a really bad spot.
That ridge runs for quite a while.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the
So what
line
It's
on
the
the
overall
sides.
fill of the pipe.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
full.
yeah, we're running all, if you opened it right now, I'll bet you would see it's up there.
So the
Okay, so
capacity,
this is a major area of concern then,
for capacity.
for capacity.
There was an object in the pipe, which
Is
is
it
no
all-
longer there.
All the way down?
So prior to us discovering this, they had identified that there was some mystery object lodged in the pipe.
And they couldn't get it out?
They couldn't get it
Let's let
out.
her finish. I wanna hear
The
the
town
answer.
tried it, 2 or 3 contractors tried it, it was, so part of phase 2, we added a bid item in and of itself for them to bypass the flow and televise so that we could get a good image of what was in the pipe. When they got to actually past the location now, the object's no longer there. So, at some point it has become dislodged. It wasn't when they were out there. They did not report anything coming out of the pipe when they, cleaned it and dewatered it. So at some point it did dislodge, but we discovered
So,
this other.
stop for 1 second. So I'm also noticing that the flow line looks lower now.
So there is a little bit of a sag, particularly at
Oh,
the
so that could have
start
been the higher
and
flow
this
line.
is also
Yeah.
past, so the mystery object was at 180 feet. So the flow line was about at like 75% or more at that point. We're past 180 feet and
It comes
it
down.
already has
We've
come
got a
down,
half or
so that
1/6
was
or
holding
something.
back, flow. It took up a good portion. I mean, it was probably like almost, 40% of the pipe.
Yeah.
It was,
If you could
Where did
picture
it
when
go?
we looked at it.
I'm sorry.
the pipe-
I know, that's
Here.
System.
and we don't know when. That's the.
Yeah.
And
I
I'm
mean,
assuming
theoretically,
we looked in
no.
the next manhole, to
It,
see if it,
it could have been like a fatberg, right? I mean, it could have been.
I thought it was out, the lining was, it was between the
Bulge.
lining and the pipes.
So we think something
That was another
lodged
guess.
between
Oh.
this lift in the liner,
Uh-huh.
and it was lodged in there. It looked like asphalt, but
That was my guess, was macadam. It's a piece of asphalt. So what is this ridge? Is that normal?
no. So what it is, they call it a lift.
A lift.
And it is hard, which is good, I guess. But we don't know. It could have been sometimes if there's infiltration in the pipe.
Below
So,
the line.
when they did, there was infiltration and it just ran along, the inside of the pipe. It could have been
So it
someone
didn't
running their
cure-
service
It
connection.
didn't cure on the bottom.
And it didn't, or it could be sediment in there. So essentially, while they were lining the pipe, that was up and it continued to cure and it cured hard. So it's about 175 feet or so.
so is it an area of concern, that lip? The
Um,
bump?
Not an immediate, I mean, that object alone, that ridge has been there for a while, we'll put it that way. So that's been there for 30 years. Having that object out of the pipe already has helped the capacity at this point. I mean, we haven't gone in and, had a camera in there, but just taking that large of an object out, it's not restricting the flow anymore. But, the ridge is not, structurally the pipe is fine. In order to address that though, it would be a big undertaking, so.
You basically have to replace the pipe.
But doesn't that reduce the capacity
Yeah.
of the pipe?
Oh,
It
yeah.
does,
It does.
Because isn't that the same as the sewer going underneath the railroad, the I-95?
Yeah, it's
And Tom
essentially
Golden
like.
used to
That's
say the problem
70%,
is
yeah.
you've got that pipe.
Oh, yeah,
Sewer
the
line,
the
yeah.
sewer
Yeah.
line and
And
the
the
storm
drainage
line, yeah.
mistake.
Right.
Yeah.
the sewer line in the
It
box
does
culvert.
incrementally reduce the
Yeah.
capacity because it's taking up some of the cross-sectional area.
Yeah.
Do we need to, isn't it, you said it's for 175 feet?
Yeah.
How
But
do
it's
you
the
fix
post
that?
road
Yeah, how
and,
do you fix that, do you know?
There's options. One would be obviously to entirely dig up the pipe and replace it, not
sounds fun.
advisable. The next would be to install, to basically, they could go in and cut out that portion of the ridge. and-
Orthoscopic surgery.
Yeah, essentially they'll go in and just cut it out in sections, leave it as is, or cut it out and then install a new liner over it. That obviously then would be, you're removing the ridge down the middle, which reduces capacity, and then you're adding a new liner in after that, which would, reduce the capacity a little bit. The liner going in, most likely, it wouldn't need to be designed for like a fully deteriorated pipe. It could be a thinner liner than you would be putting in normally if it was just the original like hose pipe. So.
But are there, I mean, I guess it sounds like, you know, it's in a very low-risk state right now. And it seems like lining over a liner and cutting it out, that seems like, I don't know,
Yeah, I think
more risk.
from the perspective of it has been there for this long, and yes, the pipe, you can see it's at 75, but it has come down now. You know, I don't know exactly what it is, but you know, it has come down.
And then this is another thing to look at after the phase 3 rehab when we do a lot of the upstream work.
Exactly. It's not a jump on now and need to fix it.
Darren, could that explain some of the stuff that was going on Brook Street and in the back there in Grove Street? A while back, we were always trying to figure something was weird there. Could the capacity of that pipe have some relationship?
It was a restriction, but,
Okay.
I don't know, when we looked at it, you know, the flow was up here normally, and in the middle of the day, and all we could see was the top of this object. And you got right up on it, it looked like you could see shiny aggregate, and that's why we thought it was a chunk of asphalt. And then somebody else looked at it and said, that's not asphalt, there's a rock underneath the liner. And we said, oh boy, that's why we broke one of our sleds trying to pull through there. And then somebody else said, well, you didn't break the sled because of that. It got lodged between the top and the bottom. So we didn't know, and the only way we found out was for
But it's
Lindsay to-
gone.
But it's
We
gone.
don't
I know,
actually
we're
ever,
kind
will
of
ever
upset
know.
because we wanted to make a trophy of it.
Yeah.
It's been years of trying to.
I would have brought the rock. I would have brought the
Yeah,
asphalt.
I know you would have.
Yeah.
I love when you bring in show
Now,
and
not
tell.
here, but at the beginning of this tape, it looked like you were able to.
This is the beginning.
This is the
This is the
beginning.
beginning?
6
Yeah.
feet in.
This is.
And it started over.
He's already-
Okay.
yeah.
Keep
So
going.
we're
We're
at
Some
7 feet.
section along this, you see very distinct, I'll say the ribs. Is that an area of concern?
Was it over here on this side, the
If you
wrinkles,
could-
or I think
no,
it
no,
was from?
ribs.
I think it was from when they clean it.
Oh,
They were
okay.
using really high pressure jetters previously to try and get this out. So I think what it is it was starting to kind of scour the pipe a little bit. So and kind of it's working off anything that was built up there, but it can also, with
Yeah,
that high
polishing-
pressure, if you sit too
polishing
long,
the
it can
inside
just.
of the pipe.
I mean, it looked the thing was, it looked very uniform.
Yeah.
It spins like around, so.
I
Okay.
thought maybe it was rebar, but I think this
That's
is
what
a
I
VC.
was, that's
No,
what I
no,
was
this
saying,
is
the ribs. of the-
definitely lines.
It's
The
no, I
ribs
mean
of
the
the pipe.
rebar from the pipe underneath.
Oh.
But it's a VCP pipe. It's not concrete.
Yeah, I'm
as far
pretty
as I
sure
know.
it's
So,
DC, yeah.
like when we did on the post road, the hydrogen
Okay.
sulfide ate away the concrete and left the ribs. But look, there's no ribs on the top, and you know.
So what point was this object? We're at 26 feet now?
It was at 180,
Was it near the sport shop or like? what-
upstream of the sport
Okay,
shop.
so
Yeah,
you
so the
bang?
downstream manhole is kind of.
bag of money.
at the-
So it wasn't
A little
like
past the
state.
driveway.
Money from the bank.
But you don't see many laterals coming in. Is this-
I think there's only one, because the Cena and the,
Movie theater.
Movie
I
theater.
think they come in, well, I think it must be there's a bank, right? Oh, no, the bank's out. So I think Cena, they come into
There's a
the actual
sidewalk.
manhole.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
sidewalk one that goes into a
So there's a
manhole.
connection that comes in right at this upstream manhole.
Okay.
So I think the only thing coming in must be the bank.
Oh, this must be where the
Maybe
sag
Cena?
is.
Yeah, so there's definitely a little bit sag, and you see the grease at the top, so.
There's a chunk.
So if the laterals were coming in, what height would they be coming in on the pipe itself? Mid pipe?
Depends upon where, yeah, I mean, depends upon where the elevation, I mean, sometimes service connections could come
Okay.
in the top. I mean, obviously they would, you don't wanna go, you can't go down
No,
too
trying to
far,
figure it out,
but
yeah.
probably most likely it was around
Top
kind of like
third.
2 o'clock or
Yeah.
so,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah.
All right.
All right, we got to move on. Thank you.
Yeah.
We will forever.
Leave
Yeah,
it going,
keep it
because I
on
want,
loop.
I
It's
want to
fascinating.
wait for
Forever
180
no.
feet.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for 180 feet.
All right, we got CD&E. What do you got?
18 and 20, nothing new.
Okay.
18, 20, okay.
They still have not given us you recall, we do have, we did find some stuff that was given to us by the Hammernicks. I reported that at the last meeting. And we reported that we were waiting for capacity analysis from their engineer. Haven't gotten that yet.
Okay.
just since Lindsay's here, can we ask her a question about D? What is a real successful sump pump removal plan? To me, I don't know about this paperwork stuff.
So we're
Is that what
gonna,
it looks like?
Yeah, it's a little
feel
different.
free to answer verbally now and also in writing before our August meeting in 5 weeks.
Actually, D is just a little bit different, if I could
Yeah,
make
go
that
sorry.
distinction.
Yeah.
That it's, I believe there's a letter in here. Yeah, there is, the email on the very last page. The sewer commission asked staff to include some
Oh, that's right.
language about sump pump connections in our storm drainage manual.
Which are.
That's a little different than item number 5.
Yep.
Which is
Okay, yes, sorry.
no problem. And I don't have anything new on E.
Okay.
The lateral's protruding, and I don't have anything on that.
Okay.
The thing hasn't dropped down again to,
We clearly
This is
have
what-
things that just appear and
and
disappear in our
disappear in
system.
ours.
It's there the whole run. It's the
All right,
pipes
there's the
sags
ridge
a little
it
bit, so
started.
the flow level
See,
kind
this
of
is
rises
where
up.
you start to see it. See on the bottom, on the right, and
Yeah.
see, now you
Yeah.
start to see the rings.
Looks like a corrugated pipe
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well-
almost did.
that's been lined.
But the spinning jet head,
Okay.
high pressure, I.
All right, we're getting
seems
close to
reasonable.
180,
Oh, yeah,
147.
So we would be interested in your
DVDs.
thoughts on
Yeah.
effective sump pump programs.
Yep.
Again, you can do a quick version now,
Yes,
but
I
if you
just-
want to put something in writing, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So what we've previously done, basically it starts with the ordinance. You need to have the authority to do anything you want to do. Whether it's using kind of a beneficial system of we'll give you this money if you disconnect, or, you say you're
Carrots and
fined
sticks.
because of it. So incentivized or decentivized. But what we've done previously is you get the ordinance in place, and then essentially we picked the area in this community where it was most likely the highest. It was kind of like we did a little bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like an initial kind of like study area.
Low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, we knew that this probably had a lot of sump pumps, and we essentially sent out the letter saying that, we're gonna be coming around doing sump pump inspections. We need to enter your house. Please call for scheduling an appointment. And obviously not a lot of people called, so it's a matter of, notifying them that we have the right to come in and do this inspection. So once they go in, they inspect to see if they have sump pumps. If they do have a sump pump, they, trace to see where the discharge goes, and if it is connected to the sanitary sewer line, they're notified after by a letter stating that, per the ordinance, you need to disconnect the sump pump. And you have X many days to disconnect it. Once you've disconnected it, we're gonna come and inspect it, that it has been
But one of
disconnected.
the ways to do it effectively would be to target an area where we sense that there might be a lot of connections. And so
Yes.
if we wanted, do we have data based on our 2020 monitoring that would enable us to sense that? Or is that something maybe that we would capture if we do some follow-up monitoring in 2026 to say, okay, we did all this good work, but we're still seeing a lot of inflow over here?
So we do have, based on the study, the areas that we do know the areas that had kind of a high delayed inflow. So those would kind of be the initial starting points. I mean, obviously there's multiple things that could contribute to the delayed inflow, and it's hard to differentiate. Is it, sump pumps that are causing it, or is it because of, stormwater related infiltration? But that's the starting point. And I think, after that, it's talking to the DPW, finding out if there's areas of known sump pumps, and kind of going in that direction, kind of with the historical information from them, and kind of trying to pinpoint a specific area as like a dry run to see, how it goes.
Well, in your initial flow report, whenever you did that, 2020,
Yeah.
it said that delayed inflow contributed to 83% of the total inflow volume in all meter areas. So that's a huge amount,
Yeah,
huge.
yeah, absolutely. So,
But delayed info could also be getting into the cracks and things.
Yeah.
yeah,
It could
so.
be, it could be.
We did find that based on where the two groundwater gauges were located, that there was a pretty decent response to rain. So it rains, it percolates through the ground, and then the groundwater levels rise. And so defects that are at the top of the pipe that may not be,
Flowing.
groundwater might not be up to that point under normal conditions. Once the groundwater rises after it rains, then it's getting into those locations. So that is also, delayed inflow as well too, that we consider. So.
Right, but if you repeated it after you've done all of the good work of lining and sealing the manholes, and you were still at 75%, then we would know
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that's sump pumps.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I'm looking forward to
Yep.
being done with phase 3 and then getting like another baseline of like, how successful were we, and where do we go from here?
Yeah.
And the fact that we're cameraing 8 miles a day or 8 miles a year.
Yeah.
Have we done 24 miles?
We have
now?
not yet. So
Okay, we've done 16
we're
miles
planning
so
for
far.
it. So,
Yeah.
we think we have it now narrowed down to the 2 sewer sheds that we're going to hit next.
So we've done 16 miles. This will be our next 8 miles.
We've done, well, technically the SSES, the year that we did, so 2021 was the first year. So we've done
So
3.
So we've done 24 miles,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to do another 8 before the end of the year.
Yeah. And it's all been within the Stony Brook study area. So, and
we
the
also tend to find stuff during the CCTV that wasn't necessarily obvious during the inflow testing. Yeah.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
then sometimes it disappears.
And reappears, which is why you can put the camera back in. All right.
Based on some of the data presented earlier, and having the flow meters north and south of the whole little sub-sewer shed, and having those pipes lined in phase 2, right? Quite a few were
Yeah.
lined. Could we extrapolate an I&I not related to maintenance issues that we've done on that sub-sewer shed right now with that data point?
The sub-sewer shed, meaning the sewer shed that they're going to be
Correct.
connecting to?
Yeah, because it seemed like we had all the way to the pump station, and we had right above the highway, and you have 191 houses, or 151, whatever number of houses
Yeah.
that were, Fitch and Hecker, and a lot of those got lined.
Yes.
And then the 15-inch is lined.
Yeah.
And the 24-inch, I think, is in good shape. that we know of.
24-inch was upgraded through, we basically from 95 was upgraded to 24-inch PVC, from 95 through the Renshaw Road ball field, and then, where does it stop? I think once it crosses Renshaw and before it goes into the easement. So the easement is still 24-inch RCP, reinforced concrete
So
pipe.
that was an older pipe.
Yeah, which we did look at.
Okay.
We don't feel it needs to be lined yet, but we are doing repairs to the service connections that come in.
And we
So
had that open pipe that was near the.
that eliminated a significant
So,
amount.
but
Yeah.
with the flow data that we've got now, vis-à-vis the 2020 and the 2024 data, can we start to extrapolate what is not, what is a sump pump possibility in that area? There's some wetland corridors there that have low-lying houses that do flood.
Start talking to your neighbors.
Yeah, I'll go door to door, you come with me.
The SP police.
But I'm
bring
just
my
saying,
dogs.
this was always one of the questions I had, is how do you?
They can smell
we
sump
are-
pumps.
How do we narrow this down? And we've got an area there where we do have.
We could take a
something.
look at kind of
Yeah.
that isolated with the information that we have.
Could you?
Yeah.
Like a quick and dirty idea of that proportion of the two, what we had before, what we have now?
Yeah, I did not dive into the meter data extensively yet because I felt like that was going to open a, they got a lot of information, so it would be something that we could look at. The hard part is that it's not apples to apples. So it's not like.
I get it, rainfall
yeah,
data,
but
the
we
whole
could take a
thing.
look and kind of see like what.
Yeah, I don't know how you level the data, but I'm just curious if that sniff test gets us closer to that concept of figuring out where there are issues with something.
Yeah, I mean, that whole, I think the majority of the pipes,
We're all lined.
I think, are all lined now. Hecker was entirely lined.
Fitch.
Fitch was all lined. Archer will be, that they still have 2 segments to line there. So yeah, the
Sense it's a
majority of
desire
that.
to finish over here.
No, hey, don't pull the hook here. These are good questions, man.
I'll keep talking forever,
We
Tim.
have an expert here.
Free engineer, I mean, free. She's already driven here, traffic and.
I have to miss kids' bedtime. You
Well,
can
we
keep me here as long as you want.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I'm good.
Go Dog Go by P.D. Eastman.
Well, all right. Obviously, we'd love to see the ordinance that you referenced on some
Yeah.
pumps
Absolutely.
as a good guide and kind of how that program worked that you were involved with. Any new business?
I just have a
Wait,
question
did
for
we
Lindsay.
missed one, right?
No,
No,
we
shooting
did not.
would kind of.
Or
There
we're
was no-
skipping over the protruding lateral connection?
There was no additional information to
No
provide
additional
today.
information, okay.
I just have one tough question for Lindsay.
All
Okay.
right, come back up.
Two trains.
All right. So, we hired you guys for the peer review, but you guys also did the SSES.
Yes.
Are you too close to the situation to do a true peer review? Because it's a great deal of your research that is being used by the applicants?
I think it's actually beneficial because some of the things that we're picking up on may not have been known as quickly or easily if we hadn't also done the study. So like we were saying, picking up on the pipe material, the previous one for the other applicant, picking up on like the pipe is lined and they didn't get that part of it. So I think knowing the system, knowing the materials, knowing rehab that's been done, we kind of have that closer eye to it. And after that, it's just the numbers, so.
Okay. I had to ask, sorry.
Yeah.
Good question.
All righty.
Good to get it cleared up.
Yeah, no, it was a nagging question I wanted to ask him.
Any new business? Peter, you're up.
Make a motion, adjourn.
Got a second?
Yes.
3 seconds, all those in favor.
Aye.
All right, we are done, Channel 79. You too, may
7 o'clock.
go home.
Nailed it on the nose.
All right.
Was that your
7 o'clock.
number? Were you
Is that your
betting on
number?
seven?
We're
Take half the
betting on
pot.
7?